song that went along with Richard Paul Evans' Christmas Box books. What's that guy's name? Traffic Truck. T-R-U-P-P. Association of Counties, AL.
The Utah Association.
Not only that, like this, which I forgot about. So.
How are you?
Can't get my tubs and sprays packets to come up.
Big meeting.
You know?
Thanks for the scramble, buddy.
Doesn't like it anymore. That's you. Excuse me. We can't sign the contract without it. Can't get up my Thompson Springs thing disappeared. Andrew's gonna be here. So now I can relax.
3 minutes, that was right, Rory. 3 minutes, was it?
2, 3, you're going less now, huh? I said 3 minutes, you have 3 minutes. No, you can have as much time as you want.
We're not too intense, I like it. It's like a black tea, but it's not sweet.
Yeah, that's just trying to get my Thompson Springs fire.
Yeah. You got some draw? You ever seen that? It's like a big mushroom.
Rory, how you doing?
I'm actually
You been causing any trouble? Causing any trouble? Hi, Rory. How's your daughter?
Yeah. She's in a lot of pain.
Yeah. Hospital treated her.
This is soft.
Well, she'll have more, right?
Oh,
candles.
I don't have a Thompson Springs packet.
I didn't know Walmart.
Okay. I'm gonna have to.
This one.
So Jalen knows what that's.
I always go by the.
You're gonna be here. Okay, bye.
This is a not bug.
It is 4:01, so I'd like to call this meeting of the Thompson Springs Special Service District Administrative Control Board special meeting to order. We will call this meeting to order. Let's have the Pledge of Allegiance to begin with. Walt Dabney, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are on, do we have any citizens to be heard concerning Thompson Springs? Okay.
Madam Chair, can I just suggest you open the, call to order in your usual procedure for the Thompson?
Oh,
So we know what we're doing.
okay. I did call the order for the Thompson Springs Special Service District. Present is Greg Halliday, Jalen Hawks, Evan Clapper, Curtis Wells, Mary McGann, Rory Paxman, Patrick Trim, Ruth Dillon, Diana Carroll. We have approval of minutes. Does anyone wish to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair. We approve the Thompson Springs minutes as of February 20th, 2018 as presented.
Okay. Do I have a second? Okay. Motion by Greg Halliday, seconded by Rory Paxman. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of approving the Thompson Springs minutes for February 20th, 2018. All in favor? Passes unanimously, 7-0. Okay, ratification of bills. Yes? Patrick?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Thompson Springs Fire District bills dated 2/20/2018 in the amount, total bills $1,864.50, total bills and payroll $1,864.50. Make a motion to approve these bills and for ratification.
Do I have a second? Motion by Patrick Trim to approve the bill, seconded by Rory Paxman. Do we have any discussion? We will have a roll call vote. Greg Halliday,
Aye.
Jalen Hawks,
Yes.
Evan Clapper,
Aye.
Curtis Wells,
Aye.
Mary McGann, yes. Rory Paxman.
Aye.
Patrick Trim.
Aye.
I forgot Ruth. Passes unanimously, 7-0. Okay, we do not have a report because Chief Markham is out of town. And so we will not have that. We have no new business, old business, or future business. I would entertain a motion to adjourn this portion.
So moved.
So motion by Curtis, seconded by Evan Clapper. All in favor? Passes unanimously, 7-0. We will now open our Grand County Council regular meeting. We've had the Pledge of Allegiance. We are on approval of minutes.
I didn't see any minutes.
I did not see any. There are none? I have a
Move that
motion
we
to-
postpone the approval of minutes, items A, B, C, and D.
Evan Clapper made a motion to postpone the approval of the minutes for January 30th, February 6th to February 20th, March 6th of 2018. Do I have a second? Seconded by Rory Paxman. Any discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously, 7-0. Ratification of bills.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to ratify the county bills dated 3/20/2018. Total bills, $2,159,667.52. Total payroll, $208,110.32. Total bills in the amount of $2,367,777.84. And I would like to move these be ratified.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Rory Paxman. Motion by Patrick Trim. Discussion? Roll call vote. Greg Halliday,
Aye.
Jalen Hawks,
Yes.
Evan Clapper,
Aye.
Curtis Wells,
Aye.
Mary McGann, yes. Rory Paxman,
Aye.
Patrick Trim.
Aye.
Very good, very good. We are now moving to an elected official report by myself on my visit to Washington, D.C.
What an intro.
It's very short, very, very short. I did? Oops. Not so short now. I thought I said Washington, D.C. Oh, I see it. Okay. Okay. I went to Washington, D.C. We flew out last Tuesday. I went with Ronnie, I went with Tony Boyd, Newton Boyd for the city council. How do you enlarge this? Do you know how to enlarge this? I'll let you know. Anyway, we flew out on Tuesday. We met with representatives on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. These are the senators and the representatives that we met with. Anyway, how do you get this to go down? You want to help me, Lee? You've used this more than I have. So these are the people we met with. It took at least 5 to 10 emails to meet with each one of them. We did meet with their staff in each one of these departments, so I just wanted to show the number of people that we did meet with.
Wow. I'm impressed.
We walked our tails off, plus we met with 6 people from the Department of Energy. So we met with a large number of people. We went, I forgot, we had a handout. I'll show you the brief handout. And we had a brochure that we gave everyone that showed the governor's resolution plus more information. But we showed everybody how, when the project was being funded fully, how much was completed, and that if it had been continued to be funded at that level, we would have been completed probably a couple years ago. This project would have been done if they had kept it at the height that it is now. We talked about the financial reasons for moving it, that we will save a great deal of money, over $360 million if we fund it at $45 million per year. So we pushed the money issue, and then we pushed the safety issues, the flooding and the rock slides. So it went really well. It went so well that we got a letter from Congressman Curtis. Where did you enlarge this here? Yep. Asking for appropriation for the UMTRA project to be funded at $45 million a year. So this was more than we anticipated. We did not anticipate that we would get that quick of a response. So they put that in on Thursday, which is really good because the deadline was 11 o'clock on Friday evening. We also got one from Via Love. Via Love also sent one in. Chris Stewart was willing, he is on the Appropriations Committee, and he is signing on, plus all the delegates from Arizona and California are signing on to our appropriation. So we can't count our chickens before they hatch, but there is a really good chance we're going to get this project funded at $45 million a year so that we can have it completed by 2024 as opposed to 2036. So we're very pleased with our success. We're just hoping that there isn't a football between now and the time that the budget is completed. So thank you.
Good job, good job.
Okay, we are to Council Administrator's report.
I guess my report is that I'm still inundated with department head annual evaluations. They're coming along, but there's just a lot. Ever since last fall, you've been hearing me say that each time. Seemed like I had something else, but at this moment, oh, I know what it was. The EMS Special Service District application, the due date for applications to that board was yesterday. And we do have to fill 4 seats, and then a 5th seat would be filled by a county council liaison. That would all need to be done at the same time the final resolution is considered by the county council, and that I have on the tentative agenda right now for December 17th. April 17th. A long time away. So you all let me know if you need something different, but that's kind of, I'm just following the state code process that's been laid out. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We have a department report from Lee Shenton, the 2017 production water report.
Wow, this isn't going to be near as exciting as what we just heard, but my kudos to our contingent that went out there and got us that close. That's terrific. Okay, from high to low. I'm here to give you a review of the status of the production water disposal facilities in Grand County. Bottom line is 2017 was even slower than 2016, and I'll show you what's happening here. Harley Dome is still closed. It's been closed for over 2 years now, so obviously nothing received. Danish Flat, down 14% versus 2016, but more significantly, down 98% since their peak in 2012. This is just about emissions. This bar on the left shows the total emissions that were estimated by Utah Division of Air Quality if Danish Flat was running at full capacity with no emission controls. The middle bar is the emissions estimated by UDAC if Danish Flat was running at full capacity with the emission controls. The bar on the right, that little teensy weensy thing there, is the actual emissions. They're not measured, they're estimated, but that's still based on the volume of throughput. The only thing I want to point out to you here is that the orange part of the bars are the methanol. And I've discussed this with you before, but in a nutshell, methanol is by far the single largest component of the volatiles. But in practice, it has very little impact on the environment because by EPA methodology, the methanol is not even at the permissible exposure limit at the fence lines for a couple of reasons. It's a lot of technical stuff, but basically it's bound very strongly by the briny salt water. And when it does release, it gets consumed by microbes in the environment, both in the soil and the air. So that's a good thing for all of us. Danish Flat, their pull-through offloading stations are now in full use. It really automates the trucks and defends against spills. Their new separation tank system is online and working terrifically. I get up there every month. I can tell you it is, since they installed those separation tanks, there's been very little sheen on the pond, let alone oily layers that are visible. The settling pond is no more. It's been completely removed and that area has been completely remediated. Emission controls were actually installed, and as we discussed a year ago, the new amended approval order for operations at Danish Flat actually requires them to run the emission control system, as opposed to how it was 4 years ago, which they could have an emission control system sitting there, but there was no requirement to actually run it. Cool, huh? All right, Harley Dome, I just want to point out the details. Great looking facility. Operation suspended February 2016. Their conditional use permit expired February 18th of this year. This council approved in January of last year their request to extend their conditional use permit by a year. Per the ordinance, it says if you're not using the facility for a year, unless you request to council an extension, then your conditional use permit expires. Bottom line is that means if anybody wants to run the Harley Dome facility again, there are two things they must do. One is come back to, probably through Planning Commission and to council, and get a new conditional use permit. And secondly, as this council wisely included a year ago, they must install the monitoring well that the previous owners agreed to install before they went belly up. Okay, monitoring fees. On this one you can see the peak in 2012. There were $234,000 of monitoring fees that came in. That's at a rate of 10 cents a barrel, and meant to offset the expense incurred by Grand County to keep track of what's going on up there. Not only your time, but the attorney's time, the clerk's office, and my time and travel. Last year, the total income for monitoring fees was $5,000, and I would advise you not to count on much, if anything, for 2018 for monitoring fees, and I want to show you how I reached that conclusion. This is a chart that I did a couple of years ago. The green mountain, so to speak, is the average annual market price of West Texas Intermediate crude oil. You can see that the market price peaked there in 2012 and 2013. But what's more telling is that the total volume, the blue bars, through the production water facilities dropped off dramatically even during the peak of the market price of oil. That tells you something. It tells you that the drilling and production was happening in other parts of the country. Plus, it reflects the fact that 2 other evaporation pond facilities opened in western Colorado. In other words, right on the way between the wellheads on the west slope and Danish Flat. So, the businesses, you know, they would pull off the closer place. And you can see that the market price of crude oil has started to rebound, but the volumes through the production water facilities have not. Okay, so we think the energy cycle bottomed for everybody. Colorado competitors I talked about, shale gas production elsewhere, primarily centered in Texas, North Dakota, and Pennsylvania, even though we have a significant hydrocarbon basin up around Vernal area. In Utah, the volumes of new drilled wells, which is where these guys get their business, is still very low. Danish Flats is only open 2 days a week and by appointment only now. No such thing as a truck driver just showing up with a truckload of wastewater. UDAQ confirms that the Danish Flats folks are in compliance with their approval order. Yesterday, Zachariah and I had a sit down with the compliance manager and the operations manager for Danish Flats. They are appealing to us to allow them to accept other materials. Won't bore you with the boring details, but you might recall a couple of years ago we talked about letting them accept what we called formation water. That is salty brines that are brought up in other drilling operations, not going after oil and gas. And there turns out there's a fair amount of that. Harley Dome's still out of service, and I mentioned that their conditional use permit has expired. So, okay, that's just details about Ordinance 528. How was that, Councilman Paxman? Get it in 3 minutes? I tried.
Good.
All right. Anyhow, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about this. Okay.
Do we have
Thank
any
you very
questions?
much.
Questions from the council? Thank you, Lee.
Excellent. Thanks, Lee.
Okay, we are now moving to the 2017 Moab to Monument Valley Film Commission report. Becca Metzler, Director.
Biga Metzler.
Biga.
It's
Biga.
all good. It's a
Biga.
hard one.
I saw the V and said the V.
Can I sit? I'm not
Yes,
really
you certainly
stand
can.
at the podium type. Hi. I am extremely proud to represent the longest running film commission in the world. It is an awesome tradition. The motion picture industry has made our Red Rocks iconic. I basically see my work in 3 categories: industry networking, service delivery, and community outreach. On the industry networking, my job is to make as many film people as possible think about this area as often as possible. So that's why I give away hats, to make sure our Film Commission logo is turning up on the right people in the right places all over the world. It's also why I need to go places like LA, New York, and Sundance as often as we can afford it. Because like anything, it's about who you know, and I know a lot of film people, but I always need to be meeting more. Once we get those people here, we want to make sure we deliver all the services they need to create their vision. If they suddenly require a stuffed wolf, or a pink princess dress, or a UPS shipment to arrive 3 hours early so they can use those special camera filters to get their magic hour shot, I happen to know the guy who flies the UPS plane. So I can make these things happen, because we all know that the magic of the movies is in the details. And I want to share that magic with the community. So I'm creating some fun events with partners like free monthly film screenings at Star Hall with the Utah Film Center and the library, a teacher training with a French documentary filmmaker, and bi-monthly outdoor movies with popcorn at Swanee Park on summer evenings. These three components of doing the networking, delivering above and beyond service, and keeping the community in the loop are how I hope to keep the legacy of our Moab to Monument Valley Film Commission thriving. And I can answer any questions about my report that you have on your table as well. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any questions from the council? You must have been very complete. Yes, thank you. Oh, yes, Greg?
How many films were done in this area last year?
Actual
Films or ads or commercials or anything like that?
there was over 100 film permits issued between the BLM, Sitla, National Park, and State Park. Over 100, so a lot.
So if they issue a permit, that means they actually make something?
Usually, yes. If they
Okay.
issue, well, the permit is paid for. If they actually issue it, then it has something that's been paid for. If they have to cancel it for some reason, but they've already issued the permit, then it's already paid for. And,
How much is the permit?
it varies depending on the amount of crew members that are here. It also varies depending on how long it takes for whatever agency is issuing the permit to process it. So there's different categories for processing fees.
Okay, it ranges from,
Ranges from category 1, $123 for the processing fee, to category 1, then category 2 is $433 processing fee, and that is not including the actual per location per fee day. I'm talking pretty much about BLM because that's primarily where our film permits are being issued. So then that goes up depending on if it's 10 to 30 people. The location fee is different than it's 30 to 60 people, 60 people to 150 people. And each location is a different fee as well.
and that fee comes into the county or to who?
That's BLM. That's BLM is BLM.
Goes into
Yeah.
whoever owns it.
Whoever owns the property.
Whoever
Sitla
owns the
gets
property.
the Sitla, right. And as of right now, I think in my report I said that I am trying to, and I would like to have implemented at some point a permit that works for the city and for the county, because there is not one in place at this point. And I think that it's important that at least there's a piece of paper that somebody signs if they're going to film in the city or in the county that says that they're liable for something. And even if we don't charge, I mean, I think minimal fee would be great, but there is nothing in place right now to shoot in the city or the county. Yes. And I think there was a little added thing, I don't know where the slips went, but there's a really cool article that that was printed up about working with a film commission. That was in American Cinematographer magazine. So if you want to know more about what it is to work with a film commission, it gives some good tips on that too.
Yes, Andrew?
What is the perception on the industry about working here in Moab, and is it enjoyable? Is it easy to work here?
All of those things, very positive. We have a strong but small local crew base, and if we can't actually work with people locally here, then they come in from the state usually. Friendly, get things done. I mean, I literally this Sunday morning got a request for a photo shoot to find propellers for a specific type of drone, a DJI Mavic Pro, and I happened to make some phone calls and had a friend in town from Durango, and he clipped his propellers off his drone, and I drove them out to Sorrel River, and I gave them the, it was like one of those. I think customer service is, pretty good. I know it is from my end and from the rest of the crew. I think people are really happy. It's an extraordinary pace. There's nothing else like this in the world. I mean, Moab and to Monument Valley is an extraordinary environment. The LaSalle Mountains, there's nothing that compares, unless you go to Jordan, the country of, and that's far.
Is there anything where we need to improve on in this area to be more attractive, or is it an issue?
I'm just going to keep trying to inspire people to come and film here. It is, we do have a lot of people traveling in all the time, so accommodations becomes difficult sometimes, and every production has a budget, and they will always say that it's small, whether it is or is not. And so it's just trying to figure out how to best accommodate them. And I'm not trying to give anything away, but I am hoping to work with some other local hotels for some type of film crew related hotel incentive so that they can hold rooms aside which I do have at a couple places already, just to make that a little easier. But we have great, there's a lot more food truck things and catering. There's things that are making it more easy to film again, as it was in the late 80s and all the way through the 90s in the film world.
Can I ask one more question? And is there services or areas that are underserved that the filming companies would be served by, that people in our community would say, hey, that'd be a great business or a niche to step into? Or isn't served sufficiently?
Actual crew it's hard because there isn't enough full-time work here to keep somebody necessarily working all the time in the film industry. So craft service is one little niche where that's feeding them snacks throughout the day. Catering is always a big one. Actually having trucks that can go remotely and feed people. There are restaurants that do that. I would love to think about it, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. There's definitely, we can always improve.
I think maybe there's a dozen people that might want to be a personal assistant.
Yeah, and I do a production assistant training to allow people who've never been in the industry to actually experience being on a set. I hold like a 3-hour PowerPoint training, and I tell them the basics of what it is to be the low end of the totem pole when you get to a movie set or a film set, carrying, equipment and helping them do whatever it is that they need, but it actually allows you to see every category that is included and what it takes to actually produce a photo shoot or a commercial or a movie, which is extreme, the amounts of people that you need. But it allows them to see the big picture in that. So, that's something that I do. Production assistance. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vita.
Thank you. And you're always welcome to come visit me over at the Mark in my little dungeon. Really pretty.
We are now at the portion of our agenda where we hear from citizens to be heard on an agenda item that is not on the agenda. That is for someone to bring something forward to the council that is not on the agenda. Do we have any citizens to be heard? Okay, seeing none, we will move to general action items for discussion and considerations. Adopting a council member to serve on a key leader board with the Grand County School District to develop collaboration that aims to help alleviate problems in the community that interfere with the child's ability to grow into a successful adult. Jalen Hawks and Jim Webster.
So most of you know that I have served on the co-chair of the Grand County Intergenerational Poverty Committee with passion and at sometimes a bit of cynicism, mostly because it seemed that effort was largely being driven by a lot of volunteers, and that's really no way to run a sustainable program. Volunteers are important, but there has to be a little bit of funding. I had a meeting with Superintendent Stroder last week, and I also read the article in the newspaper about the district's efforts to help children and students succeed in school. So I was very excited about that because a lot of the things that the district is and will be exploring could mesh nicely with this effort. In fact, our Intergenerational Poverty Committee focused on children specifically, even though we could, there's a whole broad range that are affected by intergenerational poverty. So, very excited about that. And also the legislature, I believe, allocated $1 million. We don't know how that will be distributed, how the grants will be applied for, but those two things have given my energy in this whole effort new life. And that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
All right, I'm Jim Webster on the Board of Education. I know all of you, and I appreciate your efforts. And JT is coaching a track meet in Emory right now, so or helping coach, so that's why he's not here today. But I'm here in his stead, or would be here with him if he were here. But just what Jalen just spoke to in regards to the intergenerational poverty effort that the Lieutenant Governor and others really worked on, 2-3 years now running, is a piece of this. And what we've been looking at with the school district for quite a number of months, and are energized by having a new superintendent of schools here who's got a lot of experience working with students, children that have unfortunate circumstances. That's part of his background. And we certainly have those issues in our community, in our schools, in and out of schools. And I've been telling people, anybody who will listen for years, that the problems that that occur in our community that affect that have kids that are part of the problems in our community, they're not a school problem, it's a community problem. So when we have students who have issues that require intervention and assistance, a lot of times people look to the schools to fix those problems, and the school district does a lot of stuff with a lot of students all the time. And of course our primary goal is education, but we also feed them and we provide support. We've got now mental health professionals working on our schools, interacting with kids every single day, and those it's funded by outside funding and a little bit of school district money now, and that is making huge amounts of efforts. And as everybody knows in this room and up in front of me, we have many organizations, from Sea Haven to the Youth Garden to, the list goes on and on and on. They interact with students, with children, and try to make their lives better. So there have been efforts in the past, I've been part of them, to try to really coordinate and collaborate between all of the entities that are out there. And often those things, everybody is doing as much as they can, but the coordination and collaboration just isn't there, in part because of a couple of things. We don't have anybody really to drive that and to coordinate that. And we also have made efforts to try to get some of the very top key leaders in our community to understand what the issues are and to agree that we've got these problems and let's work together. So what we've done, the school board and the superintendent, we have talked long and hard with a number of different community leaders and organizations, and are going down this road again to try to get a key leader board established. And that effort happened a couple of times over the last maybe 10 years with the Communities That Care process, most recently, that had a part-time coordinator that left the job a couple of times. So what we've done is the school district has found some outside funding to establish a community coordinator to work with the school district in particular and the charter school, and also work with outside entities. And as part of that, and a really important part of that, is establishing a key leader board. And we actually had a meeting on February 28th, and we didn't have a county council representative, much to our chagrin, but we did have the CEO of the hospital, we had the mayor, we had the superintendent, the school board, city council, and we did have representatives, although not the top dogs, at the sheriff's office and the police department. But what we want, and we're, Jalen is asking for her appointment to represent the Grand County Council, to be on that key leader board. And we will proceed with trying to get this collaboration together through the hiring of a position that will be full-time, whose job will be to work with the key leaders and work with the organizations and work with the school district so that we can really start to get our collective act together in terms of working towards making these lives, the kids, all the students in our community, all the kids and their families functioning and moving forward and bettering their lives. So it's kind of a tall order, and there's been a lot of effort already. The Intergenerational Poverty Task Force is one example of that.
I think we know, so I would like to entertain a motion to appoint someone. Yes.
I move to appoint Councilmember Jalen Hawks to serve on the Key Leadership Board with the school district to develop collaboration to alleviate problems in the community that interfere with a child's ability to grow into a successful adult.
Motion by Curtis, seconded by Patrick Trim. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of Jalen Hawks? Passes unanimously 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll let you know where the next meeting is.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Now we're moving to approving a bid award for 5 bay garbage construction at the Old Spanish Trail Arena Recreation Concept. Steve Swift. Garage. What did I say?
Garbage.
Garbage garage. Too long on the solid waste district, you know?
One man's trash.
It's better be a good garage.
Well, it was trashed from the airport. It became redundant there, and it is very useful at our facility for storage facility. We've got furniture, we've got fertilizer, we've got vehicles, all sorts of things to store in it. So it's going to be very useful. We pulled it down late last year, budgeted for it this year, or requested budget for it. And now we look forward to an approval for the bidder. This bidder is the lowest bidder on the list. He was a little bit nervous. I met with him today, and he's good about putting it up, even though he was the lowest. And that's a usual situation. It raises the nerves for the people that are the lowest. Anyway, he's confident he can do it, and it's within our budget.
Within your budget. That's what I wanted to hear.
It's we've got a few other little items to contribute towards the construction of the garage. We've budgeted for $40,000, and it should come slightly under that.
Okay. Yes, Patrick?
Steve, is there any allowances for contingency in this? Because he's a low bidder. If he doesn't, if he runs into issues or problems, how is that going to be addressed?
We have a little bit of flexibility in the budget, but not a lot.
Okay.
We can cover it, and we can also do work ourselves to assist. So we're
So you're not too nervous about it then?
I'm not at all nervous.
Okay.
Even if he walked off the job halfway through, we could finish it.
Yes, Curtis?
I move to award the bid to Arrowhead Construction for the amount of $36,150 for the construction of the 5-bay garage at Old Spanish Trail Arena Recreation Complex, previously located from the airport, and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Motion by Curtis. Do I have a second? Second by Rory Paxman. Any discussion?
Actually, just
Yes.
want to add in there, we would have this gentleman, I believe it's a gentleman owner, right? Sign the independent contractors agreement, the county's standard agreement. We don't yet have the liability insurance or the proof of it, or the license, thank you.
Yeah.
Proof of licensure.
They're on their way.
We will have that before we ask the chair to sign.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. We are now moving to item J, adopting proposed resolutions that designates the date of November 6, 2018 for a special election that designates the purpose of such special elections to ask voters shall a study committee be appointed to consider and possibly recommend a change in Grand County's form of government. We do have one person who wishes to speak on this item. We allow 3 minutes, and we'd like you to come up to the podium and introduce yourself. E.J. Gore.
Actually, I don't want to speak so much as I want to ask questions that will probably be answered in your presentation. I just want to understand how it's even happening that this is coming up. I thought we were all perfectly happy with the way things were here in Grand County, and so I'm just curious as to what the changes are exactly and how this even came up to be a discussion. And I can say that I represent many people who are very surprised and very curious about this. So hopefully this will be covered in the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to begin this with asking our attorney, who has been doing some research as to how we should move forward on this item. So yes, Andrew, could you talk to us about what you think is our best objective?
Do you want me to give some background too?
Yes.
And other people know more of the background, but I'll give you what I know. So I think citizens of Grand County should know that this issue about changing the form of government did not really come out of anybody here in the county necessarily, but the legislature passed a law and the governor signed it into law very recently, a couple days ago, requiring any counties that are not one of the 4 approved forms of government to change their form of government by 2020. And and Grand County, as many know, has a grandfathered form of government that is not in compliance with this new law, and so the county council is required by law to initiate the process of selecting one of the 4 forms of county government, and the county has to do it by a deadline, July 1st or 8th, something like that, of this year. First, Ruth says first. So there is no choice, barring the Supreme Court saying something different, about our county picking one of the 4 forms. And so there's a resolution to initiate the process as it requires the county to do by July. That's on the agenda for tonight. And so there's as some of you may remember, when the issue was brought up previously by voters about whether we want to change our form of government, there's a whole process. There's a public notice, there's 4 meetings essentially to give the public education on it and to have comment. And then there's also a committee, a 7-person committee that has to study the various forms of government comparing to what we currently have, and come up with a transition plan depending on which type of government is selected. And all this has to be approved and found to be legal, and it's something of a lengthy process. But before all of that, the citizens have to vote about whether or not they want to form a committee, that actual committee, to study the issue. And so Grand County at this point has to pick a new form of government. Otherwise, if we don't, by 2020, we automatically become a 3-person commission. So I think that's probably the important piece for the citizens to know, is that this isn't really an option of keeping what we have. This is an issue about picking one of the 4, and there's not going to be a choice in it. And we won't have a choice if we don't if our county or the committee that's set up, citizens make a choice in essence. And so that's sort of the critical piece at this point, is for everyone to know this is happening. We don't have a choice. And it was interesting, in the bill, the writers of the bill literally put in language forbidding the 3 things that make our county different in our current form of government. one of which is nonpartisan elections. That's forbidden now. Two other things, I always slip my mind.
Recall.
Term limits
and recall.
And recall. So there will be no more term limits and there will be no more recalls. And those are the three things that really make us different, two of which are likely illegal anyways. We're not telling anyone about that. Oops. So we have to, we're going to be making that process. It has to take place. And the county is required to start the process by July 1. As well, in this particular bill, there's language about county citizen groups initiating the process. And the reason I use the term initiating the process is because it's very specific and important language, I think, for tonight. One of the things that the bill did, it allows citizens to file a petition. Well, they file a notice of intent that they're going to file a petition with the county clerk. And that, by filing their notice of intent, that initiates the process for our citizens to change the government. For our county to initiate the process, we pass a resolution. However, once somebody, whether it's citizens or this government, initiates the process, it excludes anyone else from initiating the process. So once the county initiates the process by resolution, which is scheduled for tonight, it excludes citizens from initiating the process. However, citizens already have initiated the process by filing a notice of intent with the clerk's office. And so the way we're currently reading the code, this new law that really has a lot in it and has a significant amount of uncertainty, is that the petitioners have initiated the process by filing their notice of intent. And so that excludes Grand County from passing a resolution tonight initiating the process. That was one of the specific things that the writers put into the bill that said you can't have competing processes of changing the form of government. You only one at a time. And so if this initiation of process that the citizens have started fails for some reason, there's 5 or 6 reasons it could fail, based upon not enough signatures or not the right signatures, or the voters voting against changing the form of government, then another initiation of the process to change it could happen. But regardless of that, the county's ordered to, it's a must by July, but it looks like there's a citizen group that has initiated the process, and so we'll be moving forward with the code according to that. So although everyone's been scrambling to figure out what this means, and there's certainly plenty of legal people that don't quite know what it means, and nobody has all the answers, it does appear that the process has been initiated and that it would be something that we should not do as vote on a resolution tonight. If we vote on a resolution tonight to initiate the process, it very well might be void and illegal. There are some people who are arguing that because the county must initiate the process, that excludes the citizens from initiating the process. And currently there seems to be no language that excludes that says that the citizens can't beat the county government to the process. All that being said, it's still, whether the citizens do it or the county initiates the process, it still requires the people to vote to have the committee, and then it requires another vote whether to accept what the committee's recommendation is for one of the 4 forms of government. So the process is the same. There's a few differences about setting up the committee, as far as I can tell at this point, for depending on whether the citizens initiate it or the government initiates it. But essentially it's the same process, and this committee is going to study all the forms, compare it to ours, and make a recommendation, and people in the county can say, no, we don't want that. And then it sends the committee or the process back to the drawing board, except we have to do it before 2020. Otherwise, we're a commission by default, 3-person commission. So it's all happened very fast. The governor signed it just recently. It's made everyone scramble, council members trying to figure out what to do, and attorneys upstate, people in the governor's office and the clerk and county administrator trying to figure it all out and what it means. And we certainly don't have 100% confidence in the analysis, because sometimes these things take years and court hearings to figure it all out. But I think the clear reading is that once the process is initiated, it excludes the other group, and so that recommendation, we're recommending not to vote on the resolution tonight.
Okay, yes, Curtis?
Well, I wanted to just try to help to provide some additional context. If you look at the bill, HB 224, the House sponsor of the bill is a representative from Weber County area. Weber County has been in an issue where there are some citizens that filed a petition to change the form of government. The county commission in Weber County tried to come in over the top of that with a resolution and affect that process. And it created a conflict, a political conflict of some county commissioners in Weber County. And so the bill is driven from that context and that scenario, that you can't have elected officials with a conflict of interest or a bias involving themselves in a citizen's process to change the form of government. If you read through the bill, you'll see that in references to population size and class of counties. In legislation, you can't isolate specific counties and say this county will change, another county won't change. What they have done, and there's precedent for it, is they target circumstantially based on the population of a county. So there's references in the bill to like a population of greater than 250,000. So you can see that it was an instrument that is mitigating a situation or a perceived error in the law. Also, Utah County, their representatives got involved. There's a press conference on the state website where they're wanting to change the form of government. They've had an issue with one of their commissioners and they're not happy and they can't recall them. And so there's an effort to clean up the process for them to change their form of government. And then, of course, just a general tightening of the code to bring everyone in compliance. And Andrew referred to term limits, nonpartisan elections, and recall. And those are all things that the state legislature moved on from a long time ago. And everyone that, this bill in the last week has turned everyone into an amateur lawyer, let me tell you. And there's a lot of different interpretations. But what's clear is that they're cleaning up the code and they're saying we have 4 forms of government, you've got to come into compliance. And they amended the change of form of government process, in my opinion, due to circumstances in those 2 mentioned counties. I have some questions more for on this resolution, because the council did not meet and deliberate over this and decide to place this resolution on the agenda. And I'm personally a little bit frustrated at how we got to this point with this agenda or this resolution that has not gone through legal, is my understanding, with our administrator's interpretation of the bill. In this scenario where I think it's important that we step back and, be, like a county attorney said, allow for proper legal analysis, because if anyone's ever read through state legislation, this thing's a real beauty. And so, Madam Chair and Ruth, my understanding is you two met yesterday morning to discuss the impacts of this bill. Is that correct?
We got together to discuss what the bill entailed. we found out, at that time, at first, it was like we thought we had till July 1st to do any action. I left the meeting thinking we had time to get together and organize. And then, which upsets me because there's people in town that knew what was going on before our elected officials and the county, who is being directly involved, found out about this and chose to go ahead and do a petition, and thus did not allow us to do our due diligence, which we would have preferred to do due diligence, write a resolution, put it on, put it in front of the county citizens, and have the county council vote on it.
So let me
so
finish,
I will finish first. I did jump on the wagon. I did it because at that time I thought that that to do so would give us the opportunity to take control of the issue rather than someone else.
This is the problem I have with this is, number one, who's us? Because the council was not notified of this resolution until 7 o'clock yesterday. We weren't given a draft of this resolution until 11 o'clock. The public was not notified of this. The website was not changed until today. I checked. An email went out between 4 and 5 o'clock to notify the public of a resolution. And here's my problem, is that the driver for this bill was to mitigate elected officials getting involved in these citizen-initiated processes. And so you met on your own without notification of, I'm the vice chair, and I don't know of any other council members, with the administrator. You did your own amateur analysis legal analysis of this bill, and you pushed a resolution on this agenda, bypassing the public. The public has not been aware of this, and you're justifying that because you can do a better job than the citizens of this community in managing this situation. And I find that very, very inappropriate, and I am strongly advising that we take a step back and give our county attorney an opportunity to discuss this with the Lieutenant Governor's office, to give our elected official, clerk auditor, the election judge, an opportunity to do this, because you taking the position that you know what's best and a resolution that the public hasn't seen and that we haven't seen until we saw a draft resolution at 11 o'clock last night is very sloppy, and I think it creates a big liability for us.
I think not knowing that there was, yes, Evan Clapper?
I'd like to make a motion that we table item J, adopting a proposed resolution, and move on.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion to move to postpone the discussion and consideration of the resolution has passed unanimously. We will now move to adopting proposed resolution pending legal review designating a new budget officer.
Okay, this is me, right into it. You've got a resolution in front of you that's gone through legal. There were no recommended edits to it. It's very simple. There's references to code that allows for the legislative authority to reappoint the designation of budget officer. The legislature allowed for this flexibility in county governments some time ago. Some counties, the designated budget officer is the clerk auditor, like we've been operating. In some counties, it's a staff member in the auditor's office. In some counties, it's the county executive or administrator or a staff member in the administrator's office. We're going through some changes and improving and growth in the budget process and how it's handled, and decided that it's in the best interest of the county with this growth pattern to make a reappointment, and that would help with the budget advisory board. And I want to make clear this is not a slight towards the elected clerk auditor who has been serving with limited time she has as the budget officer, but an evolution for the county. I think this is a good direction to go. Councilmember Trim hosts a great and extensive financial background, CFO of our local hospital, I think that he will do a fine job. I wouldn't say that this is a permanent move, considering Councilmember Trim has not filed to run for re-election. But bringing the designated budget officer within the legislative executive branch is something that we feel like would benefit us as we transition into this budget advisory board. We'll get to that later, in which the clerk auditor, we look forward to working with her and thank her for her service as clerk auditor, and hope that she's able to contribute to the budget advisory board. And we let Patrick speak to it. No, it's not going to be a light lift to transition, but hope that we can collaborate and move forward. We have a lot of challenges and things that we've been working through, and this is a step in the right direction. So, Councilmember Trim, do you have any comments or anything?
So in our packets, you can see under agenda item M, there is a long list of directives that some of you on the council have seen, but it was put together to really define the budgeting process and how we're going to go forward with it. This is proposed to get the right people in the right spots, because having this as the heavy lifting, I guess, that we're going to have to do with this, we're going to have to get the right people so we can divide and conquer. So you got some people in public finance that have a great background. You've got some people that are, great at the budgeting piece. You've got, people that can run concurrent paths so that we can get this agenda completed. So the idea is to try to get this in place by the end of the year and to see where this kind of takes the council at that point. But one of the first things that I want to point out, and the first priority, is the salary compensation survey needs assessment. That is the very number one thing that we're going to tackle first. So I know that's been kind of a point of contention. I feel bad about that, but now we're going to take it and we're going to really work this until conclusion, right? Which is going to be shortly, I would say 2 to 3 months.
So with that, Madam Chair, I would move to designate Councilmember Patrick Trim as the Grand County Budget Officer, effective immediately.
I have a motion by Curtis, seconded by Jalen Hawks. Any further discussion? Yes.
You're currently full-time budget over at the hospital. You going to be able to handle this?
Yes. So Greg, I've moved things around, and when I was appointed to this, I worked for Jen Sadoff, who's been very supportive of my involvement here, and I think she understands the need to share my time with the council and with the hospital. So I've got some great people that they can pick up some of the slack for me at the hospital while I'm working here.
Yes, madam.
Oh, just a quick question on the motion. Was it to adopt the resolution that would appoint Patrick Trim, or is it to appoint Patrick Trim? It's just a...
If that's what needs to be on the record, then it's to adopt a resolution.
Thank you. That's it.
Adopt a resolution to appoint Patrick Trim. Do you want to restate it?
I think we're square.
Yes, and legal review is complete.
Any further questions?
You feel like with the time you have left, you'll be able to...
Yeah, I think so. I think, we're going to talk about the committee in a minute, but I think if I get the right members on the committee with the right expertise, I think this is doable.
And then the passing of the torch.
And then the passing of the torch. And however the council feels at potentially the end of the year or however long, then it's, at least we've got a discipline process in place. Somebody can take it to the next level, just like, Diane did a good job. We're just taking it to the next level. You just keep improving as you go, so.
Any further discussion? Okay, we had a motion by Curtis Wells. Did we have a second? Jalen, that's correct. Okay, I couldn't remember. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, I will call for a vote. All in favor of the resolution to appoint Patrick Trim as budget officer? Motion passes 6 to all opposed. 1. Motion passes 6 to 1. We are now moving to citizens.
Madam Chair, do you want to say who was opposed?
Oh, and Motion passed, Greg Halliday opposing.
Thank you.
Citizen applicants interviews for possible volunteer appointment to the newly established Budget Advisory Committee as designated Grand County voters with a demonstrated interest in or professional knowledge of budgeting and financing. Okay, so we will have our interviews. Councilman Wells?
Okay, so this is for two citizen appointments to the newly formed Budget Advisory Board. So we just want to invite them up one by one and just have an opportunity for some very brief just question and answering before the council makes a decision. And we'll start first with former Councilman Chris Baird. Belly up.
Well, I guess I missed y'all. Do you want me to? Do you want to ask questions, or do you want me just to speak?
Yeah, maybe give us just a brief introduction and your experience and credentials, and then if there's any questions, we'll ask.
So I think my main credential is that I've been through 6 seasons of budgeting and kind of specialized in budgeting on the council. I don't think all through those 6 seasons that I missed a single budget session, so I have a really good understanding of all the county's funds and of fund accounting principles. I understand all the revenue streams, their restrictions, and the laws that govern them. I understand all the capital infrastructure needs, and I have a lot of experience with resource development, so I also understand the need to put money away for grant matches and low interest loans, sometimes even zero interest loans with various entities. Those are all things that require a lot of planning. You don't want to have to cough up several $100,000 out of the blue. And so, over time, I think that it would be great to get a better long-range capital infrastructure plan together. Another element of experience that I have is as the treasurer for 2.5 years with the Grand County Recreation Special Service District. And that was an interesting position because when I first got appointed, that district was out of compliance with their audit, and even got a letter from the state treasurer asking us to rectify the situation or cease operations. It was a challenging situation, but it gave me a lot of experience because I just totally revamped the chart of accounts and came up with a new budgeting process that used software instead of paper worksheets, and it made a big difference. I think we were under financial duress at that time because mineral lease revenues were down, but I think the process that I developed really helped balance the budget, which they were able to do. And I talked with Diana earlier today. The county also has software installed and ready to go, and I think that'll make a big difference for this committee and this process too, because it'll give better access to information. But plus, you can project it on the screen, and everybody can work off just one master sheet. When you have everybody scribbling notes on separate sheets, you're bound to end up with a lot of disagreement at the end of the process as to what actually occurred. And so I think that'll be a big step up. And then lastly, I did bookkeeping for 2 years for a small nonprofit, again using fund accounting principles. Any questions for me?
Thank you. Questions?
Thanks. All right, thank you guys.
Yes.
Are you going to stick with it and stay till the end?
Oh yeah, well, so to that end, I am running for clerk auditor, as I think a lot of you know. And so, I think considering that that's a real job, with actual pay, this is something that I consider to be important for continuity sake. I'm very familiar with the budget, but as you guys are all aware, this new committee is a new process. It would be useful for me if I do get elected to have continuity with the process, even though I have a lot of experience. So yes. Absolutely. Any other questions?
Any further questions? Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So up next, and I'm may mess her name up, but is it Lisa DeReese? Lisa DeReese. Okay, come on up, Lisa. Thank you for applying.
Thank you. My name is Lisa DeReese, and I would appreciate the opportunity to be on your Budget Advisory Board. I am also running for County Clerk Auditor, and I have over 16 years accounting experiences in Moab. That also includes, once upon a time, doing the bookkeeping for the Grand County Cemetery District and also the town of Cassell Valley many years ago when I used to work for Barbara Hicks' office. And I feel that I have a really good reputation in town and that I would be able to be a great contributor in a positive form and would really appreciate the opportunity, as I am seeking election, to grow with all of you into this budget process and seeing how I can help make this more transparent as well.
Thank you. Questions? I have one. Okay.
You mentioned you were running. If you weren't elected, would you still be willing to serve on this committee?
Absolutely.
You mentioned that you worked and you did the budget for the Cassell Valley, the town of Cassell Valley.
I did the bookkeeping. Okay. I did the bookkeeping. It was when I was on staff at Barbara Hicks's office many years ago. We did many sets of books in that office, and that it included the municipality of the town of Cassell Valley.
Okay. So did it give you knowledge of the difference between how government entities...
It did.
It's in what ways?
Well, knowing how to pull from the different pots, how the money is, it's not just like a regular checking account. It's not working for, yourself as an entrepreneur and you write yourself a check and then you deal with it at the end of the year. I did see that there's different ways of pulling through the different funds and how they need to be spent or not spent. You might not be able to spend money from that particular account. It has been a while, but I have a really good working knowledge of accounting in general, and working with multiple entities. In my current job, it's tricky, and there's a lot of intercompany billing that I do now, and so you can't just take from one account to pay for that. You have to make sure it works.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. You do? Set back down. It looks like you have a question now.
I don't know how to ask this question, but if it were to happen that both you and Mr. Baird were selected for this committee, could you both serve, and I guess I would extend this to Mr. Baird as well, if he's still here.
Yeah, he's still here.
Could you both work together, serve with the best interests of the county and not, how do I say this, make it a competition to see who's going to be the best?
That's a great question, and I thank you for asking that. I would be honored to work with Chris because I think there's a lot I could learn from him as well.
Chris?
I have no problem. Yeah, I'm going to do the best I can, though. I will do that. But I can absolutely.
Okay, yeah, you have a question.
I do.
Okay.
I didn't want to interrupt, though. You
just answered.
Okay. So can you just delve down a little bit more into your experience in terms of, you say it was accounting, right?
My work experience
Yes.
is accounting, yes.
Okay. So what did that entail? Did you do the books by computer? Did you do it manually?
Are you talking about now?
Now.
In my current position,
Yes.
yes. I'm all on QuickBooks.
Okay.
And right now I'm managing 8 entities at Moab Springs Ranch for McKay Edwards.
Okay. Any public finance
No.
experience at all?
No, but very eager to learn. And I feel like Grand County's been really good to me as a citizen, and I would like to just have that opportunity to serve and to give back as well.
Okay. No, that helps. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Calling once. Any further questions? No. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Up next, we have is Zach Weischek in attendance.
So Zach is on his way. I didn't understand if there's going to be an interview process.
Okay.
So he'll be here in a few minutes.
So one question, point of clarification I have with Ruth is, Ruth, we, according to the ordinance, we had to stagger some of the terms. Do you have your notes in front of you on the way that was laid out?
I remember it says, and it does in almost all of our boards, commissions, and committees, about half, approximately half, of the ones that are not permanent positions. So we know that from the ordinance, the clerk auditor position is a permanent position, as is the budget officer. So it would be the remaining ones, the elected official, council members, non-elected county department head, and the citizen voter.
And so how many of those do we need to appoint to just, it's to finish this year, correct? It would be to finish the remainder of this calendar year?
Well, so of those four, elected official, council member, and I don't know if that's one or two, because it can be up to two, non-elected county department head, and the citizen voter, if we count four, then approximately two of those should finish out this year, and the other two should finish out at the end of next year.
Okay, so when we make our...
2-year terms?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2-year terms.
They are 2-year terms.
When we make our appointments, we just need to, at the end of the next agenda item, or at that agenda item, we just need to clarify the length of those terms for those that will serve just the remaining of the calendar year. So.
Right, and they do end December 31st, either this year or December 31st of 19.
Okay.
Okay,
It's your call, Madam Chair.
I'm looking at my agenda, our next agenda.
So who are the other representatives on?
We're going to appoint those.
It's agenda item M.
Oh, it's agenda item M.
Were we planning on doing those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all separate, or just one big swooping?
Good question. I was, in my mind, anticipating doing them all together, but yeah, we would just need to be able to clarify in the notes the terms associated, or which of the non-permanent are only going to serve for the remainder of the calendar year. So.
Yes.
I move to table agenda item, postpone, no, table.
Table.
Agenda item.
K.
Is that K? All right. And
L,
move on
it's L. It's L.
It's L then.
L.
Okay, I'd move to postpone agenda item L and move on to agenda item M. So I want to postpone it until after we've done agenda item M. Will that work for
Part of
everyone?
M is,
We could start working our way through.
Well, should we do N? Because that doesn't have anything to do with appointing people. That's approving discretionary funds.
I'll make a substitute motion to postpone, to table items L and M, and move on to item N.
the
Do I have
directives.
Yeah.
Do I have a second? Evan Clapper, motion by Curtis Wells to move to item M, tabling item L and M until we have Zach arrive. So let's move to item N, approving discretionary funds of up to $6,000 to increase user.
Next one up.
Madam Chair,
Oh,
did
I'm
you get a
sorry.
vote on that motion?
Oh, I didn't. All in favor?
Thank you.
Passes unanimously. So we're going to this one, approving directives for the county council. That one?
Yeah.
Okay. Approving directives from the county council to the budget advisory board. Member Trim and Wells.
Go ahead, Pat.
So we're looking at the Cassell.
The directives.
The directives, and
Okay. So let me grab those. So if you take a look at those directives, I want to review these. As I can find them.
It's a lot of paperwork.
I see your computer.
Are we
Still wasting time.
are we starting with Exhibit A or
Those
the
are-
bullet points?
So you're looking at the priorities and directives.
Okay, the bullet points?
The bullet points.
Gotcha. All right, I'm
Okay.
with you.
So as you look down here, I'm going to go through these very briefly, as soon as I can see them. And I want to, give reaction to these, but the first is to create a transparent process for budget creation and communication. I think that's huge. I think from a public standpoint, it's.
You have a loud voice that you might want to move
Oh,
your mic a little
sorry.
closer. For the people on YouTube.
That's okay. So the idea is to make sure that this is transparent in everything that we do, right? So I want to instill that in with the board that's selected and make sure that we have either a way that the departments can see their budgets very quickly and manage by those, right? So we're going to be looking at the software there as well, right? So second is decentralize the budgeting process to allow department managers to take a larger role in controlling the budget. That's basically putting together dashboards and making sure that they can manage their budget. It's very easy when they pull it up, and it allows them to be able to see if they're over budget, under budget, where they need to be, so they can work with the budget office so we can make the right, corrections in the budget. Set accountabilities and responsibilities for departmental budgeting. Basically, we did that this year. I don't think it's as formalized as it should have been. So you'll see another directive in here talking about setting this schedule up much, much quicker so that it gives the department managers a lot of time to be able to work through the process. And so they're not rushed, they're coming here and they're working with the advisory board up front. So when it gets to the county council, it's very easy for us to see, what we need to see based on what our priorities are, okay, for that year. Develop a training program. Training is extremely important when you introduce software. So we want to make sure that that gets done. Create direct access for department managers to the Cassell software. Talked about that. Document in compliance to all Utah statutes that pertains to budget submission required documentation. This is where Diana will be extremely helpful to make sure that we file on time, to make sure that we meet all state and statutes. Review budget process and document new procedures. I think we need to concentrate on the procedures and how we do it. If we're looking at as a budget board, we need to really make sure this gets into the transparency piece, but to create the policies and procedures so everybody's on the same page, right? And we train on those. The thing that Ruth and I have been talking about, and I know Diana as well, is the revision of the purchasing and capital policy for the county. That's extremely important. Obviously, that ties into the budget. If we decide that the capital limit is going to be different, obviously more is going to be then budgeted to expense, right? So it does have budget impact, and I think it hasn't been looked at, Ruth, in a few months. Okay. But I don't think we've revised it in how long?
Oh, it hasn't been revised in probably 15 years.
Right. So
I think
that
year
needs
2000,
that needs
18
a
years.
Really close look. Work with consultants if we decide to go that route with regards to salary compensation study and a needs assessment. Now, these aren't in order of importance because I just had stated before that this is the number one priority. This is something that I want to look at, I want to review with the board, and I want to make sure that they are in lockstep to make sure that we're progressing with this so we can come back with different options for the county council. The other thing that I think is very important is a benchmarking piece. We really need to benchmark with other counties and other counties that really have a tourism type of economy like we do, because we fluctuate. I mean, in the winter, we're probably overstaffed. In the summer, we're probably understaffed. So I think what I want to do is make sure that we benchmark with the counties that are as close as possible to us. They have a tourist economy. They're bringing in tourists. Basically, we can correct the numbers, but they're smooth the numbers. But they're basically set up to be a benchmark and a guide for us as we look through this. Okay. I talked about dashboards. Creation of a 3-year strategic plan that outlines major initiatives. Obviously, to me, that's extremely important. We had our last seminar or our get-together as a county. We talked about putting together a 2 or 3 year plan to make absolutely sure that we're kind of in agreement that that's the direction we want to move. Obviously, that has budget impact. It could have huge budget impact. So I think that's very important, maybe to have that more upfront this year, so we can talk about that. So that kind of sets a direction for the budget advisory board. I'm going to skip down a few of these. Provide an historic look at the budget process to include revenue and expenses and assumptions in order to develop a process that improves and potentially corrects past budgeting challenges. Okay. So as we look at this, is there a better way to do it? Right? Is there a better way to improve? And then the final one is review the capital asset schedule. So I try to go over them quickly, but that, as I stated before, that's a pretty aggressive agenda. So, and I think it's doable as long as we get the right people on with the right qualifications. That's going to be key, because if we've got to bring people along, if we had the luxury of doing that, then I'd say, let's do it, right? But I'm looking for people that can hit the ground running. I'm looking for people that can take that, take pieces of this where we leverage their strengths so that they can take part of this and be running with it. So to me, that's an important piece to be able to get this agenda done. And then it sets it up for somebody else to step in, have a pretty clean slate, and can just take it to the next level, right? So, and I think it helps with this budget advisory board, because when you look at this, if you look at this, these are probably things Diana wanted to do, but it's very tough to do that by yourself, right? You got to have help. You got to have people that are willing to lend a hand. So I think we've got some good applicants. So, any questions?
Can I add one thing? The budget officer by law is also the purchasing agent.
Well, that goes right down my alley. So,
That's great.
Yeah.
What was that?
Purchasing agent.
Purchasing.
Yeah, we just need a motion to.
Sit down.
Oh gosh. Let's finish this item.
Just hang on.
So with that, I'll make a motion that we approve the list of priorities and directives as presented from the county council to the budget advisory board.
Do I second? Motion by Curtis to approve the directives from the county council. That was seconded by Jay Lynn. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of these directives? Motion passes 7-0. We will we will return to item L, interviews. Okay, Curtis, would you take over?
Okay, so we have Zach, well, I call him Scott, I know your brother.
That's my brother, yep.
So we would just like to have you give a brief introduction, your background, qualifications, budgeting and finance, and then an opportunity for council members to ask any follow-up questions. So thank you for your application, and tell us about yourself.
Thank you for your time, council members. My name is Zach Wojciech. Currently, I'm the Director of Accounting at Moab Regional Hospital. I've been at the hospital now for 3 years. Been in my current position about 8-9 months. Previous experience with expense budgets and revenue budgets, large hospitality career for 12 years in California and in Utah. Smaller hotels, but large revenue hotels. At the hospital, conducted the 2018 budget, We're off to a good start there. I was the president of the HOA over at Red Cliffs Condominiums, assisted with their budget, made sure that we still had cash in the bank every month. So yeah, that's my experience in a nutshell.
So Zach, I have a question.
Yes.
Can you go over the amount of money that you're responsible for in the budget at the hospital?
The expense budget is $25 million, excuse me. It's $25 million, excuse me.
Okay. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's good size. That's twice the size of our general fund. So you work with Pat quite a bit at the hospital?
Correct.
What was your title again at your role?
Director of Accounting.
Okay. All right. And I assume you guys work well together.
Yes. Zach's my right-hand guy. We've revamped the budgeting system over at their hospital. We did it so that departments would have better access to their information. They've got dashboards, they've got the whole shot. So Zach's been instrumental in that. He's learned the software. He's worked with departments, working on variance reports, which is one of these, to make absolutely sure that we're staying within budget. We catch out of budget requests very quickly, so that we're, just like here, we're watching out for taxpayers' funds. We're watching out for hospital funds. So.
Thank you. Rory, question?
Yes, Zach, what did you do up at Sorrow River Ranch?
I was the operations manager up there.
Was this before they went belly up, or was this after?
This was after. The year that we were there, we actually profited the first time in the 4 years that Liz had owned it. Profited about $900,000.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay.
I sat through a lot of budget meetings with Zach at Sorrel, and I can say his biggest fault is working too much on other people's jobs.
I would agree.
So that being said,
Yeah. You have a question?
yeah, I just wanted to make sure this is a sane level of. We just went through a large list of tasks and goals for the budget committee.
Yes.
And I wanted to ensure that you were up for that.
I could be committed 100%, absolutely.
And we were also talking about staggered terms. And I was curious if you weren't appointed today, if you'd be willing to serve in the future. I know you don't have a crystal ball.
But absolutely, yes. I was open to that.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, Pat.
Sorry for the short notice.
Oh, you're okay.
Okay.
Back to item M. Item M is affirming and approving all 7 initial board member appointments. We received, the board is designed to have the county auditor as a mandatory member, the budget officer as a mandatory member, a county elected official, which will need an appointment, a non-elected county department head, which will need to be appointed, 2 county council members, and the remaining balance citizens. So in this case, you have a budget officer who's also a council member. So per the ordinance, we have the opportunity to appoint 2 county council members with the additional mandatory seat being Pat Trim, or Patrick Trim serving as the budget officer and a county council member. We can appoint 2 citizens to the board. So there's some flexibility there. We did receive letters of interest from Elaine Gisler, who's our travel council director for the non-elected county department head, and we received an application from the Grand County Treasurer Christopher Kaufman for the elected official who is not a council member. And we did not ask that they sit through questioning. So with that, I would like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move to appoint Christopher Kaufman as the county elected official, Jalen Hawks, Patrick Trim as council members, and Patrick Trim also as the budget officer, Elaine Gisler as the non-elected county department head, Zach Weischek and Christopher Baird as the citizens with professional knowledge of budgeting and finance, with the staggered one-year terms to apply to both council members.
Meaning which year?
Both council members
Ending.
serving for the term that will end this calendar year.
Thank you.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a substitute.
Wait, I think we need a second.
Did I have a second? You had a second? Okay.
I'd like to make a substitute motion.
Okay.
Copy what Councilmember Curtis said, with the exception of changing Lisa DeReese for Zach Wycheck, yeah, what you said.
Do I have a second? Okay, we have a vote, substitute vote. We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
The reason why I'm making that substitution is because I think we're tapping the hospital already a lot for Councilmember Patrick Trim's position, and to tap them again for another guy, I think is a little overkill. Plus, I'm not comfortable with having two people that essentially work together doing the same thing, and that's where I'm coming from.
Okay. Any further?
So, this is an aggressive agenda. I need people that are qualified, not people that want to be on there to learn and want to be on there to grow. I'm looking for somebody that can hit the ground running. I don't think the concern about the hospital is a valid one. There's all kinds of support at the hospital for this, both from our executive team. So Greg, I can't be hamstrung if I'm the budget officer. I have a reputation of succeeding, and I want to succeed here as well. And if I'm told that I have to have somebody on the council that's not, and it's your decision, obviously, but if I have to have somebody that, anybody, I'm not talking about names now, I'm talking about anyone, I'm talking about qualifications. If I have to have somebody that it maybe is not as qualified as other people, that sets the agenda back. It sets it back dramatically, okay? That's why I have to be able to, I know Chris has a very good resume. I can vouch for Zach, 100%. I know that we can get through this if I have these type of individuals that really understand finance. And I'm looking for more strategic thinkers, not tactical people, right? Because a lot of the issues we're going to be dealing with are process, our software, they aren't putting the numbers in the system, right? They're high-level thinkers that have done this in the past. So that is why I really, if I'm going to be successful in this, I have to have the right people to support me, right? Because this isn't work I'm going to do myself. This is going to be work that everybody on that board is going to be assigned different things to do, so we can get this agenda done. And if I can't be able to have the people I need, and this is qualifications only. This isn't talking about, I don't know Chris and I don't know Lisa that well. I've never met Chris, I've never met Lisa. But I look at the qualifications on paper, and I know that Chris has served before. I can vouch for Zach. I mean, Evan even said it. He wants to get into this. He wants to understand the county side of it, but he's got a plethora of accounting background. So that's all I'm going to say, but that's really the argument I'm going to make.
Yes, Chris.
So the reason why I made that motion with the pertaining to the citizen appointments, and first off, I really appreciate everyone's application and willingness to contribute to this, because I've personally put a lot of work and thought into this, and the council has as well. And I think this is something that's going to add a lot of value to the county long term. And it's something that I'm very heavily invested in. Patrick Trim being willing to serve as the budget officer is a very large statutory responsibility, something that I'm sure Diana would say is not something to be taken lightly. And by definition, he's going to be in a leadership on this board. We've agreed that Patrick will do a good job, and I want him to have the people that he thinks he needs to be successful. And having someone from another organization that he works well with, I think, is a lot of value. And I want to say also that, Lisa, your resume is very impressive, and I want to be sensitive that you're running for an elected position, and also Councilman Baird. And that creates, it's good that you guys are wanting to get involved. Chris's background, there's probably not someone more uniquely qualified for such a board. My value is towards the board being successful and not wanting the board to be a platform for a campaign. And not to say that it would be, but the county has been through some pretty turbulent meetings and issues with the budget. And I want this to stabilize and to get some good work done. And that's the best group that's come forward, and why I made that motion.
And Lisa, I do appreciate it as well. Just understand that I'm just going off qualifications, not, nothing else.
Yes, Evan?
Yeah, I was definitely sensitive to the fact that with an election coming with two candidates that I'm worried about the council endorsing one candidate over another. And so that's kind of a sticking point for me. But I'm also sensitive to your point, Pat, of wanting to be able to hit the ground running. And so regardless of how this vote turns out, Lisa, I hope that well, I don't need to put the cart before the horse. But,
Well, what concerns me is there is an assumption that Lisa doesn't have what it takes. And I'm uncomfortable with that. I mean, I called some of the people that she's worked with and talked to different people, and the outcome of those conversations is that she is more than capable of stepping into this position and doing an exceptional job, that she has the ability to grasp big ideas and small ideas and do an excellent job. And I am also concerned about the perception of endorsing one candidate over another. I think that puts the county council in a pretty awkward place.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I don't look at it that way. I look at who's best for the position. Who can do the best job. I'm not saying Lisa doesn't have qualifications. I'm not saying that at all. But it's to me who has the best qualifications, right? So there's not an assumption from me about, I'm looking at resumes, I'm looking at past history, I'm looking at, what these folks have done and how they present themselves in interviews. So I don't want to get the impression that, somebody is being singled out here. And I know it's an election year, Evan, but to me that's irrelevant to this. It's, if we want to be successful, it's just like at the hospital or any organization I've worked at, you got to hire the right people, right, to do it. So.
Okay. Yes, Curtis,
My last comment is just that I'm certainly not operating that Lisa's not qualified. Matter of fact, we have I'm really excited and looking forward to this group getting to work, because the three citizens that stepped up are some very talented, experienced people. So again, I really appreciate everyone that's stepping up to the plate on this. I think this is good government, and I'd like to call for a vote.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I have to bring this up because I'm just looking at the Budget Advisory Board ordinance, and I just want to be sure everybody is on the same page with this. It requires, so I'm concerned that we have 8 voters for 7 seats. And affirming the county auditor hasn't come up yet, but assuming that you all, when you do your motion, will affirm the county auditor, then you have Chris Kaufman as the elected official, 2 council members, which is required. The board shall contain 2 county council members. So that's 4. And then the balance of the board, then we have the non-elected county department head, Elaine Gisler is the applicant, that's 5. Then the way the ordinance is written, the balance of the board is to affirm the designated budget officer, which is also Pat Trim, if that person is not one of the positions listed above. But in this case, the person is. So that would leave only 1, the way I understand this, citizen voter. So you guys do with it what you want, but I just have to point that out.
So the way the ordinance was written is that more or less the budget officer is a mandatory seat on the board if it's not one of the permanent positions or the county positions, meaning council member, clerk auditor. So in this case, you have a council member that's also a budget officer. So that was the context I provided before the agenda item. If the budget officer is not one of those folks, then there's only room for 1 citizen. Because the budget officer is also a council member, and both motions that have been made are to appoint 1 council member and a council member / budget officer, there's 2 citizens appointments available, which is what's the motion that's been made. So
that's how I understood it too.
So I think we're fine.
I think we're fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ruth, do you have a?
I'm sorry. I just was going completely on what the word said, and I honestly didn't listen. I don't mean any disrespect. I just really wanted to put that out there for you guys to sort through. It's not my.
Okay. So yes, that's I understood it, that if the budget officer is someone other than someone that's already on the board, then there is only 1 citizen.
So as both motions have been made.
We're voting on substitute motion to have the clerk auditor have anyway.
Sorry, but
no, anyway, everything's the same except that we're gonna the substitute motion has Lisa and Chris as the citizens.
No, Lisa and Zach.
No,
he did say
Lisa
and Zach.
Lisa and Chris. Otherwise, it was just.
Is there verbiage in the resolution that if we change the budget officer to somebody that's not already above, what happens then?
Well, if the budget officer was, for instance, staff or the clerk auditor, which to this point, the only instances of the budget officer being someone that's not the clerk auditor is either staff or the county administrator.
Because it's written that it can't be, the budget officer cannot be the citizen at large.
Yeah, if there was a situation that we wound up in, we would just have to bring the ordinance back up and amend it to.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you have a limited time in the position.
Yeah, just till the end of this year.
So I'm just, at some point, we'll have to appoint a new budget officer, right?
Yeah, we'll be appointing, if either of these 2 motions are passed, we'll be appointing a new budget officer next year and 2 new council members, or well, potentially 1 new council member.
But if there's 2 citizens serving, and then we, for some reason, appoint staff as the budget.
Then we could have just 1 county council, because that's a choice too.
Okay.
Okay, so let's call for a vote. Who's all in favor of the substitute motion of having Chris and Lisa as the citizens at large? Call for a vote. 2 voted for Lisa. All opposed? So we have 2 in favor. 1, 2, 3. What did you vote?
I abstained.
Abstained. And you? So it's 2 to 3. So we don't have. So the motion fails.
So the first motion's brought back up to the floor.
Yes, but Madam Chair, can you speak
So
to
I
who
will,
failed?
I will announce who voted. Who voted in favor of the substitute motion was Greg Halliday and Mary McGann. Who opposed was Patrick Trim, Roy Paxman, and Curtis Wells. Who abstained was Jalen Hawks and Evan Clapper. Correct?
Jalen voted in opposed.
You were,
What's your vote?
She voted opposed.
you opposed, you voted to,
Initially, sure. But opposed.
okay. So 3 opposed, or 4 opposed now. And 2 in favor and 1 abstained.
Clapper. That's
Clapper abstained. And Hawks, Wells, Paxman, and Trim opposed. Halliday and McGann in favor. Okay, we go back to the second one, which has the original motion with Chris Baird and Zach as the citizens at large. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes 4-2, and are you abstaining?
I'm still abstaining.
Okay, so the motion passed. Patrick Trim, Rory Paxman, Curtis Wells, Jalen Hawks in favor, Greg Halliday, Mary McGann opposed, and Evan Clapper abstained. Thank you.
Pat, do you want to just provide some brief communication to your new board members about getting a new meeting scheduled or reaching out to them or get to work?
Or Ruth or Department Brian, what I need to do is find out when the council chambers are open. I want to start these meetings once a week for right now, because we got a lot of work to do. And it may go to every other week, but I think once a week now, and I'd like to have them here if we can.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you think an evening, or we'll wait and see what everybody's schedules are?
Yeah, I think so. If we could just get a day for right now.
Okay.
That it's open. I'm thinking more toward the evening, like 4 or 5 o'clock.
Okay.
If that works for everybody else.
I know that Fridays tend to be really open, just in general, if that helps.
Let's try Fridays at 5 o'clock. That works.
That's some dedication. Kudos to you, Pat. Friday at 5.
Okay, so we will now be moving to item O, approving discretionary funds of up to $6,000 to increase user and access to Cassell government accounting software for the Budgeting Advisory Board. Councilmember Wells and Trim.
So this is to add in the agenda summary, the background, we've got 7 user licenses currently, and the way it works is you can only have 7 people on at one time. So to have a budget board working on county fiscal matters, we need to expand our access, and the recommendation is read-only access to everything except the payroll module. And then also there's an additional subscription product called My Excel that can be helpful in this process. So really what this is resourcing the Budget Advisory Board to have access, on-demand access to the county's financials, to that accessibility enabling them to do their job. And the quotes have been included in the packet. And so with that, I move to approve an expenditure of up to $6,000 from the council's discretionary fund to enhance and expand Cassell access for the County Budget Advisory Board.
Motion by Curtis Wells. Do I have a second? Seconded by Patrick Trim. Any discussion? Yes.
Question. What's software assurance? What is that?
In what context? I'm sorry.
It's got it on both of them. What is software assurance?
On the
Charges $100 a month for one and $25 a month for another.
That could be the maintenance and support. But I'll have to take a look at it more in detail, Greg.
Yes.
That's the name of our software, Cassell Assurance. And just to let you know, we have program in place already. I kind of introduced you to it at the beginning of the budget process. It's the Advantage, Cassell Advantage, which is just exactly what you're talking about you need. We've paid $14,000 for it. I have a user, all departments can log in. Matt told me yesterday that he's finally got the new server up and running so that everyone, even the road department, the senior center, all the outlying areas can now log into our server and access they each will have a login that shows them a dashboard. They can upload or download spreadsheets and then upload them to me to have the data entered in just by a spreadsheet. It's more than what you would get from the program that you're talking about. We don't have to pay additional licensing for it.
So you're saying that the program that you have now does the same as this Cassell?
So something that we can do is, this is a motion to approve an expenditure, but to give Pat and the Budget Advisory Board time to fill this out and compare and contrast, and trust that if they don't need to acquire additional resources, then to not do it. Yeah. So what would you like to do, Pat? Would you like a motion to postpone this item until you can have this conversation with Diana? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I'd like to learn more from Diana about this. I know there's other software packages that can be bolt-ons that give you tons of information. So I'd really like to get a demo on this from somebody before we make this expenditure.
So I would move to postpone this item indefinitely.
Any further discussion? Did we have a second on the first motion?
I got it, but tried to.
Well, because Diane raised her hand, that's right. So I didn't get a second. Okay, so we have a first.
We have a substitute motion to postpone, and I seconded that.
Okay.
So.
All in favor of postponing? Passes 7-0. Okay, approving proposed job description and new position for a full-time grant fund weed technician at grade 8, John West, Human Resource Director, and Tim Higgins, weed supervisor. Higgins.
Want to go ahead, or you want me to?
Well, I'll start with talking with some of this. We've been, I think over the last, since about 2001, we've had about 14 or more seasonal workers. And every time you have to do that, there's more training that goes with it. And for people to be able to identify some of the plants,
yeah, that would be hard.
It takes more than 1 year, because you're looking at trying to be able to see them in the rosettes. You're looking at seeing them as they're starting to bolt and grow bigger before they get flowers on, as well as you're trying to identify them with the flowers. You're also being able to try to identify them after they've gone to seed, and how to be able to deal with the herbicides. There's just a lot of stuff involved with this. They've changed just recently on how a person is to get their license now. It used to be just $20. You studied the material, then took the test. Now you got to take an online course before they'll let you take the test, but there's $20 for each, where it used to be only $20. So there's additional expense that way. And we've had some good people that would have done well with this job right here in the past, but they have left for other jobs. So we're just trying to be able to keep people around, just so they can be able to learn how to be able to do this job, and for in the future.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move to approve the proposed job description and position for a full-time grant-funded weed technician at grade 8, and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Motion by Paxman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Patrick Trim. For any further discussion? Yes, Jaylyn.
So there is a typo, which I'm okay with. Maintains and repair equipment. Should put an S on that. That's in the first paragraph under technical, while the second. Oops, But more than that, down in administrative, the last red line sentence says assists in writing grants for noxious weed control projects and helps research for new grants to apply for. And this is ticky, but I would change research for new grants to apply for. I would change that to helps identify new funding sources, because it's not always a grant, and it's probably more accurate to say it that way. And that I have no issues.
This was a grant-funded position?
Yeah.
And then what if the grant doesn't come through in the future?
If the grant doesn't come through, they'll have it part of, they'll sign off saying that they know it's grant funded. If there's no funding, then the job would end, and we'd probably just go with seasonals until we're able to get more funding for it.
So at this point, there's no fiscal impact for us?
Pardon?
There's no fiscal impact at this point?
Not at this point. We've currently got, I think, about $48,000 in grants up to the end of this year. You know, and then we'll be working on some bigger grants for next year for multiple years. So it'll give someone at least, hopefully, 2 or 3 years where they can be able to have a guarantee of where the funding's coming from.
And is the full-time position is benefited?
Yes.
And that grant covers that stuff as well?
Yes.
Right. No more questions.
Okay. Any further questions?
So there's no match required for that grant that the county
Well,
has?
some of the grants there is matchings for, but that's what we've already have gone, and you guys have already approved the grants that we there's one more that you'll look at on the consent agenda, and I'm only counting about half of that as for this person. The other half would be for our lead weed technician to be able to do some of the treatments up in Cassell Creek.
Any further questions? Call for a vote. All in favor of approving this job description, a new position? Passes 7-0. Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could just say, grade 8 is right in between the seasonals and the lead weed tech. And so that was by design. This is a job description that it didn't make it into the study because it's brand new. But I just wanted you to know, grade 8 pays $14 and something. It didn't fall into our messy $14 per hour issue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we are going to approve the proposed job descriptions as redrafted and reformatted by Personnel Systems and Services for Canyonlands Field Airport.
Excuse
John?
me, I'd like to, if we could, oh, you can go.
Well, it's one where, for this particular issue, we had to act quickly. We can table this issue.
Can you let her say what it is?
Sorry.
I don't know if we finished. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on.
Where are we at?
Well, we were on approving proposed job descriptions as redrafted and reformatted by Personnel Systems and Services for Canyonlands Field Airport, correct? Is that where we're at?
Yep.
Okay, so what's?
It said to be provided, and we were scrambling to see.
And it's not been provided, so that's
Okay.
tabling the
Sorry,
issue.
we were jumping the gun.
Oh, you're asking us to table?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, no wonder I can't find
So
it.
moved.
So moved.
I apologize, it just didn't have time this week.
We can tell you later all the
Yeah.
circumstances that led up to this.
Okay, we have a motion to table item Q by Evan, correct?
You do mean postpone, right?
Postpone.
Okay.
Postpone, and seconded by Rory Paxman. All in favor? Passes 7-2.
Old P, new Q.
Yeah, R. We're now on approving proposed job descriptions as redrafted and reformatted by Personnel Systems and Services for the Community Economic Development Department, Planning and Zoning Administrator, Technical Inspector, and UMTRA Liaison, John West, Human Resource Director, Zachariah Levine, Community and Economic Director.
While he's coming up, he's here, but we're only putting on the agenda right now these positions that are open so that we can get recruitment started.
So these positions are not currently open, but will be in due time. And I want, because of the nature of the positions, I would like to get word out that they're going to be vacated and need to be filled as soon as possible. And so here we are presenting the updated job descriptions to you today. As you can see from the agenda summary, there are no significant changes from previous job descriptions. My staff and I have fully vetted these job descriptions and played an instrumental role in redrafting them when that process was taking place. So just looking for your nod of approval so I can get these out.
Do I have a motion? Yes, Jeanette.
I'll make a motion, but first I wanted to have you clarify for me on the first job description, second page.
You need some more.
Number 3, special qualifications. It says that the AICP certification preferred but not required. However, it will be encouraged within the first 2 years of hire. Why is that encouraged? Is it something that's cumbersome to require? Is it useful?
It is. I'm actually going to be sitting for my AICP certification in May, and it's like many other professional certifications, an indication that an individual has the background necessary to fulfill the jobs. Not necessarily, but best case scenario in terms of fulfilling a job's responsibilities, and indicates that they are familiar with the many subtopics of planning. And so this is a very common qualification that you'll see in job descriptions in the planning arena. AICP certification, desired, preferred, but not required.
My only suggestion then might be to spell that out. With that, I will make a motion to approve 2 additional proposed job descriptions as redrafted and reformatted by Personnel Systems and Services for the Community and Economic Development Department, specifically Planning and Zoning Administrator and Technical Inspector and UMTRA Liaison.
Motion by Jalen Hawks.
The chair to sign all associated documents.
And seconded by Patrick Trim. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Okay, we are now on approving bid award for installing 2 concrete hard stands and corresponding alternations to apron ramp, signage, and lighting systems at Canyon Lansfield Airport.
Okay, I think this is a relevant discussion given everything that was just talked about the budget. The biggest thing is don't throw good money after bad. We went out, got $1 million grant to do this project. Reason for that is that we have engineers that figure out what things should cost, and so for any given project we have a construction cost and an engineering cost. And historically our engineering estimates have been very conservative, as in their estimates are somewhere in the 5 to 10% over what it should cost in an open market. So we put out a bid to build hard stands, and in your packet you'll see a breakdown of the bids, and this is to build 2 hard stands on the ramp and the corresponding additional needs to be met. Engineer estimates for construction costs were $707,000. Although there were 9 different companies that expressed interest in it, only 1 bid due to the severe limitations associated with our timelines and what's required to meet those. And the 1 bid that we got was $1.25 million when we estimated the project to cost $707,000. We believe that one of the biggest components, the largest single line item in this is concrete. It was designed with FAA specifications. There's only 1 company that has those specifications on file right now. It takes 28 days to develop and get approved concrete spec'd out. Only 1 company had that, and thus the cost of an estimated concrete cost of $285,000, and the supplier for this bidder gave them $655,000. So almost the entire budget cost was just in one line item. So Airport Board met and agreed with the recommendation of our engineers to not award this bid at this time. We will put it out later this year. That will give additional companies the chance to develop those required specifications, also working with the DOT to see if we could potentially use since the FAA is not paying for it, do we have to use the FAA specs for the concrete? Instead going with the UDOT specifications. We've learned a whole lot about concrete in the last 72 hours. And everything that's the ancillary factors that strongly affect it. So that being said, the recommendation from the Airport Board is to not award this bid at this time. We will readdress it later in this year because we definitely think that we should be able to do this project for a significantly less value.
So your suggestion would
So my suggestion would be to not recommend the awarding of this bid at this time. What this will
Well, let me just say, we don't do a negative motion
Okay.
per Robert's rules. I mean, it could just be postponed.
Okay.
Or no motion made, but you wouldn't do a negative motion.
So Judd, I just got a question. Why do you think that is? Why do you think you can get it cheaper? Do you think there's concrete?
We had several individual companies specifically state they are not bidding on it because they do not want to work with the one supplier that has the concrete, and due to the cost that it would cost them, and they do not have time to make their own spec. This project was a very tight timeline. We got the funding last week or 2 weeks ago. Put it out to bid actually before we got the funding. Had the bids close last Thursday. Had the Airport Board meet last night with the original intention of awarding it today. That would give them, with the project completion of a 21-day project construction time, having it completed by April 30th. So when you throw in mobilization and a 21-day project schedule with $2,500 a day liquidated damages to meet that extremely tight deadline, it was hard to find enough bidders to make it a competitive process.
That's what I was looking for. Okay.
Mhm.
So we wouldn't award this same bid, we'll be rebid.
Correct. We will rebid it fully in this context, or if we can get approval by UDOT Aeronautics to utilize a different concrete mix, we would then alter the bid to reflect that.
I'd like to make a motion. I move we rebid for the installation of 2 concrete part stands, corresponding alterations at the airport.
I second.
Any further question? All in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Okay.
Does that work for you?
It does. It's, I think, the best use of.
Because I'll make a substitute.
The other option is we could pay this price and get half the project done, but then we'd still be left needing the other half without funds to do so.
Everybody at the Airport Board was in favor of this.
Okay. Approving proposed mouth-to-mouth lease agreements with month-to-month.
There. Madam Chair, there was
You're
one.
in charge of that. Instead of signing all the documents,
I'll
you're
participate.
mouthing all the.
Oh, gosh.
Madam Chair, there was actually another agenda item after this for another bid.
Did I miss it? Yeah. Approved bid award for pavement maintenance project of taxiway A and apron ramp at Canyonlands Field Airport.
Okay.
That's a good one. Need a little humor now and then, huh?
The same time that we bid that last item, we bid a project to do maintenance as crack sealing and fog sealing for our parallel taxiway to our runway. We had saved up grants for 2 years from the state for a total of $307,000, and it was in our budget to match up to that amount, $34,000. When we put out this bid, we gave a bid option 1 of crack sealing and fog sealing with an additive, hey, what would it cost to pave over the whole taxiway? Let's find out what we could find out. With this, 2 companies bid on this project, Straight Stripe and Nielsen Construction. Nielsen Construction is the company currently doing the runway project. Straight Stripe is a company that specializes in this type of work on airports. That's why they bid on the crack seal and fog seal, but they did not bid on the pavement overlay. Engineering estimates for this project were $212,000. Straight Stripe bid $200,713. Nielsen Construction bid $493,690. And then additional for the overlay. So with Armstrong Consultants recommended awarding the contract to Straight Stripe. With that, last time around, approved a contract with Armstrong of $45,440 for a total project cost of just over $246,000. This is a 90-10 split, so like I said, we had set aside $34,000 for this. Our fund match would be $24,633. And the airport board met last night and voted unanimously to recommend awarding to Straight Stripe for this project. And this would be done prior to opening in April.
Do I have a motion?
Go for it. No, go ahead. I move to approve establishing a contract with Straight Stripe for a cost of scroll back, 221.
The contract with Straight Stripe would be for $200,713.60. The total project cost is $246,333.60.
For the pavement maintenance project of taxiway A and apron ramp at Canyons Field Airport, and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Second.
Very good. Questions? Comments?
Just one thing, the reason, the other bid, did you want to explain why that other one was so high? They wanted to...
Of the other bid on this project, Nielsen Contracting is doing the work on the construction, bid $250,436 for mobilization.
And they're already there.
Oh.
They were also the supplier for the concrete on the first job.
Okay, any further?
Can we get some clarification on the dollar amount that is going to Straight Stripe?
So last council meeting, there was an approval of a contract of $45,440 between Grand County and Armstrong Consultants for the engineering services for this project. This contract is $200,713.60 of a contract awarded to Straight Stripe.
Okay.
So the total project cost is $246,333.60.
Thank you.
That total project cost is covered with 90% of that cost is covered by grants. The remaining 10% is covered by Grand County.
Thank you. And then budget.
Yes. And actually, when we had budgeted for up to the total amount of grants that we had, 307, or a $34,000 match. So we're coming in $10,000 under budget on our cost.
Wow, that's great. Okay, are you clear on the amount?
Thank you, yes.
Now? You're clear on the amount?
Maybe.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Passes unanimously, 7-0.
And just one final note with that, I literally a couple hours ago got the actual grant paperwork from the state, so I'll be getting that for signatures for an immediate turnaround. About 4 o'clock this afternoon, I got that. So.
Thank you for getting that $1 million.
Just don't want to waste it.
Okay, approving proposed month 2-month lease agreement with Pinnacle Helicopters LLC for 100 square feet of space in the terminal building at Canyonlands Field Airport, and initiating on May 1st, 2018.
Okay, this will be the first, just as a heads up, in April council meetings, we'll be getting about 10 or 12 leases for the terminal building. They just had asked me long ago to set this up, so it went to the airport board with a unanimous recommendation. They are building a hangar that they will be operating out of. They've got all their utilities installed. They're breaking ground on the foundation this week. It just will take them a little bit longer to get it built before we're open, so they want to have a place to meet their customers before their private builder, their own hangar is built.
Yes.
Sorry. I move to approve the proposed month-to-month lease agreement with Pinnacle Helicopters LLC and 100 square feet of space in the terminal building at Canyonlands Field. On May 1st, 2018, and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Motion by Roy Paxman. Second? Second by Greg Halliday. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Thank you.
Motion passes 7-0. That's gonna go down. It's one of the boo-boos. I know it is. Oh, you need to laugh now, man. On how to deal with it. Okay.
Unexpensive.
Adopting proposed ordinance and approving a rezone of approximately 4 acres of general business to highway commercial located at 2049 South Highway 191, Zachariah Community and Economic Development Director.
Okay, so as you know, it's customary for the county council to delay voting on public hearing items until the regular meeting that follows when the public hearing is heard. And so tonight you are hopefully taking action on a rezone request of 4 acres. This is 4 acres that are part of that's part of a larger 5-acre area of land. We're looking at the land on Highway 191 south of town, and it is it incorporates some of the large arroyo that runs just north of Plateau Drive. You heard all of the testimony at the last county council meeting. We have not received any additional public comment on this. Staff's recommendation is still supportive, and so I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. The applicant is also here with us tonight if you have any questions.
Yes.
Can you quickly tell us the difference between general business and highway commercial?
Well, in your packet you do have a table that reflects the different allowed uses in each zone district. So I can go through each one of those if you'd like, but I would say that the most obvious difference is that general business allows retail, whereas highway commercial doesn't. I will note that the Planning Commission will take up that issue as we sift through the use table in the coming weeks and months. The other primary difference is that in highway commercial you can have housing on the ground floor, whereas in general business you can only have housing on upper stories, and that meaning retail or commercial or retail on the bottom floor and housing on the upper story. I think one of the reasons why the Planning Commission was so consistent in their support for this rezone is because many of the most commonly cited impactful commercial developments are equivalent in both zone districts, so they didn't feel like They were, I mean, the conversation that ensued at Planning Commission, I think addressed the fact that there weren't major differences in the impacts associated with the two different zones. So the list of allowed commercial uses is slightly larger in highway commercial, but not significant in terms of what we typically see proposed in that zone district.
Do I have a motion? Greg
Madam Chair,
Halliday?
I'll make a motion. Move to adopt proposed ordinance approving a rezone of approximately 4 acres of general business to highway commercial located at 2049 South Highway 191 and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Seconded by Rory Paxman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the rezone? Was that 6 of you voted yes?
Yes.
And Jalen? Yes. Okay. So we are, the rezone passed 6-0 with Jaylyn Hawks recusing herself. Okay. B. Adopting proposed ordinance approving a rezone of 7 acres of range grazing to highway commercial located in Thompson, Utah.
Okay, so this is another rezone request that was presented at the last regular council meeting. In this instance, we are looking at 7 acres in Thompson. The request is to go from range grazing to highway commercial in order to facilitate the expansion of the Ballard RV Park. Most of Thompson is zoned range grazing, and the existing Ballard RV Park is a non-conforming use there. That's why it exists on range grazing land without having already received a rezone. Campgrounds are not permitted in range grazing, and so that's why the owner is seeking the rezone. We haven't received any public comment on this application, and while the general plan does identify Thompson as having the potential to accommodate some appropriate commercial development there, staff has refrained from making a recommendation because, to be honest, we just don't do a whole lot in Thompson and don't have a great pulse on what the community wants there. So we don't see a whole lot of reason not to approve this, but can't definitively say that.
Okay, Roy?
Make a motion. Move to adopt the proposed ordinance approving a rezone of 7 acres of range grazing to highway commercial located in Thompson, Utah, and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Do I have a second? Yes. Seconded by Greg Halliday. A motion by Rory Paxman. Discussion.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment that I sit on the Thompson Water Board, and they are in support of that. I think you'll find a letter from the Thompson Special Service District in your packet. I'm also familiar with the area in question, and I don't see any problem with the rezone request. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. We are now adopting proposed ordinance to approve amendments of the Grand County Land Use Code Section 1.8 and 1.9 related to code enforcement.
Okay, so as you all know, we are in a sort of continual effort of trying to improve code enforcement in Grand County, and the recommended changes to sections 1.8 and sections 1.9 came out of a review by the county attorney's office and recommendations to update the code to improve the enforceability of our land use code. And so there are some minor specifications in terms of process and fee levels, and so the Planning Commission voted to recommend this with a favorable recommendation. We've not received any public comment on it, and so staff supports this change as well. We've been in conversation with the county attorney's office and others, this is an administrative but appropriate change. I will also note that in your packet you have proposed fee levels for various land use violations, and as I mentioned at the last county council meeting, we do need to set a date for a public hearing to incorporate these fee levels into the county's fee ordinance. While it's been customary to update that once a year, I think that these changes are needed, and so while not specific to tonight's ordinance, I would hope that that's something else that can come out of tonight, is a timeline.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
No.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion. I move to adopt proposed ordinance to approve amendments to the Grand County Land Use Code, sections 1.8 and 1.9 related to code enforcement, and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Second? Seconded by Pat Trim. Any further discussion?
Yes, I have a question. So, do you have the infrastructure set up to be able to support this code enforcement?
Well, we'll talk about that more later in the agenda, but I believe that we have at least the foundational pieces in place to support this. There definitely are some needed areas of improvement. Yeah. I guess what I would say is that my questions wouldn't suggest voting against this ordinance.
Okay.
But just other areas for improvement.
Yeah.
Any further questions or discussions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the motion? Passes 7-0.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Does the council want to see the fee schedule again? We usually do it right before budget time so that we can incorporate these code enforcement fees into it. We have in the past done this process. It requires a public hearing and a little bit of a process.
Did you want it
a couple
before
times
then?
a year?
I think we should do it in April.
April? Yeah. Shall we do it first meeting in April? Second meeting?
I mean, we have to do a notice and all that, but yeah, we can get it going right away.
Okay.
Yeah, I think probably the second.
Whenever
I don't know if we can make the first
notice,
meeting
let's
in
do
April.
the second.
What's that?
This increases in the budget.
Well, that's revenue,
What do you
isn't
mean?
it?
It doesn't represent an expense.
Well, it's revenue. So did that count as revenue?
Well, revenue isn't specified by department. It just goes into the general fund. So.
I just wondered if Diana had reflected that.
It is not.
It is not.
And it's it would also be difficult to attach a specific dollar value to revenue associated with code enforcement because, well, first off, we don't know how many violations we're going to have each year, and there's not a good enough history of prosecution and fee collection to make an educated guess.
Okay. That helps. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion. We had a second. Is there any further questions or discussion?
You've already voted.
Get fired. Okay.
Mouth to mouth. Give Mary.
Mouth to mouth.
I'm sorry.
We're going to delay this fee schedule until when?
Well, we talked about doing it in April. Probably second.
If we have to notice, do a notice and all that. Okay, why? Reviewing BAE Urban Economic Phase 1 Assured Housing Feasibility Analysis conducted for the City of Moab and Grand County and approving commencement of Phase 2 study nexus analysis for land use deemed feasible to accommodate an assured housing fee. Zachariah, Community and Economic Development.
Okay, so there's a lot here to unpack. It's a big report. I don't know how many of you were able to get through all of it. Even if you did get through all of it, I know this is technical information, complex information. The implications for policy are multifaceted. And so let's do our best to try to get through it. I'm here to answer questions as best as I can. Questions I cannot answer, I can direct to the consultant who completed this study. I've worked very closely with them throughout the process. We've gone through a number of drafts to make sure that it is accurate and comprehensive and meets the needs of the county. Just to step back a bit, I'd like to just remind the council that this study came about by a council decision many months ago, if not years at this point, when the Planning Commission forwarded a favorable recommendation for an assured housing policy. And while it goes by assured housing in Grand County, or that's how we've been discussing it, is frequently referred to as inclusionary housing or inclusionary zoning. You may also hear it referred to as fair share housing policy. But the essence of this policy type is that new development is assessed with a fee, and that fee can take the form of $1 per square foot or a unit set aside in order to address its impacts on the demand for below market rate housing. And the council's decision on how to move forward with that policy was informed by county attorney's office review of the policy and state code, which suggested that if the county wanted to move forward with such a policy, it would be required to complete a feasibility study and nexus analysis. And the reason to complete those is in order to meet the state's requirements for the takings analysis. And so you may also hear that referred to as an exactions analysis. So what the council decided to do was to fund with the city a feasibility study and potentially a nexus analysis, while planning staff and the Planning Commission also worked on an incentive-based approach in parallel. And hopefully between the two parallel efforts, we would come out in a better place in terms of understanding what the right policy approach was for Grand County. So here we are today looking at the Phase 1 report provided by BAE Urban Economics. And the question that this study is trying to answer is, given that Moab has a workforce housing issue, if new development is assessed with a fee, is it feasible for new development to absorb that fee and developers still make a profit? Because the reality is that if developers can't make a profit, new development doesn't occur. It's as simple as that. So in order to keep development occurring in the county and to meet the county's needs for new workforce housing development, and also to meet the state's takings and exaction analysis requirements, if a fee is imposed, developers still need to be able to make a reasonable profit. Long story short of the report is that we studied 7 different land use development types to see if it was feasible to impose a fee on these development types and the developers of those projects still make money. And of those 7 land use types, only 3 emerged as being feasible to accommodate a fee. And the land use types that were deemed feasible should not be a surprise really to anyone here. They weren't a surprise to our office, and those feasible land use types are hotels, motels, condos, and really any residential development that is targeting lodging or the tourism industry, and high-end single-family homes. And because high-end is somewhat subjective, the term high-end in this report refers to the prices that are associated with the strong market prices for single-family homes. So these are, $700,000 and above homes, right? And you can imagine why the report would suggest that people who are buying, homes priced at that level could probably absorb a fee. So that's ultimately what this study boils down to, is that there are a few land use types where a fee makes sense and is advisable and could generate both revenue for the city and the county in terms of money to then fund affordable housing, as well as some units on the ground, right? So the combination of those two is actually the policy that is being recommended by the study authors. The other land use types, including office, retail, apartments, moderately priced, single-family homes, those are not feasible, which suggests that the county and the city, if they were to impose a fee on those properties, it would have one of two effects. It would either slow down development of those development types, and it's partly a product of those development types just not being very common, right? We don't see a whole lot of apartment development in Graham County. So imposing a fee would further restrict that type of development. But it would also potentially move us into a position where, we wouldn't meet the Utah exaction analysis, and we don't want to go there, of course. So everything beyond that is, really discussion and commentary and context. So my recommendation and the recommendation of the study authors is to proceed with phase 2, which would be a nexus analysis. And the question that the nexus analysis is getting at is, for the feasible development types, can we justify imposing a fee by definitively saying that this development type creates a demand for below market rate housing? So can we definitively say that a new hotel creates demand for below market rate housing that doesn't exist in the community? And so that would be, the goal of tonight is to have the council authorize the funds to proceed with phase 2. The city council is also reviewing this report tonight. I will run over there if I do have time after we get through our office's agenda items with you. And I will note that both councils have already allocated funds to phase 2. The only reason why we've broken it down into 2 phases is so that we have the option of seeking out a different consultant should we feel that was necessary after phase 1. And my position on that is that the consultant has been very good to work with. I have the utmost confidence in their ability to complete phase 2 and give the county the information it needs to proceed. And so I can continue, but I know it's a long agenda. And so I can also just answer specific questions if you have them. Before I do that, I will just note that there is so much more information in this report than what is necessary to create an assured housing policy. And what I mean by that is that this report gives us a significantly better understanding of what the development arena looks like. The pro forma analyses that are included in this report change the game in terms of us understanding how to modify zoning practices and policies in order to, better effectuate the land use outcomes that we are shooting for. And so, all I would say is that there's a lot more to come out of this report than just moving to phase 2 of the nexus analysis. That is definitely an important outcome, but there are others as well. So,
yes,
happy to answer questions.
Are there any surprises in here to you in your office? Meaning, assumptions that were made, just anything that caught your eye that surprised you guys?
Like I said, I was not surprised at all that the land use types that were deemed feasible were actually deemed feasible. I know that the reason why, say, retail, restaurants, and office developments were not deemed feasible is in part because we just don't see that much development of those, and so it would be very difficult to justify imposing a fee on those. And that comes from the perspective that development occurs where profit can be made. So it is possible, certainly, that we're not seeing those developments because profit, for other reasons, right? Aside from just the fact that it's difficult to make a profit on those. But I was a little surprised at how infeasible those were, right? I would also say that I was struck by the fact that even a very significant bonus density for apartments didn't substantiate the feasibility of a fee. I mean, I was thinking with these very significant bonus densities that we'd get above that threshold of ROI that's expected. You can see in a very strong market in this report the housing or the apartment complex with the utmost bonus density just barely gets above that 15% ROI threshold. But in my consultation and in my thinking, the reality is that I think that's the housing type that we really need, especially for our workforce housing. And so if you just think about it practically, we don't want to disincentivize that housing typology at all, right? And so even if a developer can make that threshold return, we may actually be wanting to do more to incentivize it rather than adding a fee onto their pro forma. So that was surprising, and what that means, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but this is starting to kind of foray into these other implications of the study, is that our logic with the high density development overlays is compromised. And what I'm saying there is that when we went into the high density development overlay approach, at least on the residential side, our logic was this. We realized that our residents in Grand County are probably at best hesitantly accepting of the need to increase densities in many areas, and at worst case outright opposed. But we thought that the acceptability of increased density would be tempered by the assurance that that increased density would come with affordable housing. And this study puts that on its head, because it says even with significant bonus densities, it still doesn't pencil to impose a fee, an affordable housing requirement, on basically any development that is geared towards long-term primary occupancy. And so, really that puts us back at the drawing board of having to, I hate to say it this way, but sell it to our residents, without being able to provide that assurance, So, we got to go back to the drawing board a little bit and have some tough conversations with our community as far as that incentive-based approach. Certainly there's certainly there are incentives we can offer, but we can't really pair those with affordable housing requirements.
Yeah.
So that was
interesting.
Yeah.
Did the report actually show any assumptions on, dollars are going to be brought in from this type of plan?
Yeah.
Could you share those with us?
Yeah, let me bring those up. So in the modeling presented in the plan, there was an assumption made about moderate market conditions and strong market conditions. And so those provided kind of a bracket of what was possible. And so on page 61 of the report, that's where the revenue estimates begin. And I don't have them memorized, so I'm just going to go to that section. So in a...
Is that annual?
Annually, yeah. Okay. And that's with the city and the county. So remember, this study was done inclusive of both jurisdictions. Presents some challenges doing it that way, but $80,000, as much as that sounds, doesn't go very far with consultants.
Did the consultant do a split between what it would look like revenue-wise with the
Yeah.
county and the city?
Yeah. So,
I guess I'm trying to get to Zach.
yeah, I can give that to you.
No, I meant, I want to further, so, when you talk about affordable housing and what you can do with the money
Mhm.
that you gain, I'd also like to understand what that represents in terms of affordable housing, right? How many units can be?
Right. So, like, what could you do with $1 million a year? Yeah. Well, that's partly a function of market conditions, right? Because it depends on land costs and construction costs. We know that construction costs right now are, at a minimum $140 a square foot, whereas just 2 years ago they were probably minimum $120 a square foot. That's partly a function of our labor shortage in the trades and the high demand for what exists.
Consultant actually.
No, that's not included in this report, right? So, what we can do with $1 million depends on how we leverage it, whether we're developing on city and county owned land, whether we're using that as seed funding for private developers. That's a different sort of analysis. Yeah. Of course, the revenue generated was based on setting a fee that was in between the moderate market conditions and the strong market conditions. So, for instance, for hotels, there was a range of $8 per square foot up to $15 per square foot, or $5 per square foot up to $15 per square foot. And for the revenue projections, they used $8 per square foot. Okay, so there's a policy choice that needs to be made, and yeah, and then of course the revenue projections are then also based on historical development trajectories. So for the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of lodging and hotel development. We've probably got several hundred or close to 1,000 hotel units that are already entitled that are going to come online that aren't going to be part of this policy, even if the city and the county do adopt it. How many more we're going to build is, that takes, kind of a leap of faith, right? But to the best of our abilities, the revenue projections are anywhere between a few $100,000 and like $1.2 million a year, split between the city and the county.
Anything else?
What does it take to, did we already budget for phase 2 of this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So do we need like an action, or we just heading on? Or?
No, we need to move to the next one. Move to review economic phase 1 assured housing, right?
Well, approving commencement of phase 2 study.
Move into commencement.
I mean,
so we're all clear.
Yeah,
You don't
think
have to.
in the most technical sense, you probably don't need to, but I think that it would be, a reasonable move on the council's part to just definitively say, yes, we see the need for phase 2, and let's proceed.
So a motion to move to phase 2.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously. Okay, go to the city.
Yeah, well, I got a few more items to do also.
Oh, that's right.
One more item, I guess.
Okay.
Which one's that?
And they don't start for another
The last one, Gigi. He's got one more. It's the last one, Gigi. It's a discussion item.
Oh, okay.
It's a long day.
Look, yeah, why don't
Well, let's,
I make
think-
a motion to bump Gigi up to right now.
Yeah,
That's second.
all in favor? Yes, let's.
Better schedule things at city council every meeting.
It's a bad precedent.
We're doing some last minute cramming.
Discussion on code enforcement recommendations, including the recommendation for mandatory online registration of nightly rentals.
It's mostly for Elaine, just so you know.
Yeah, we both appreciate it.
Discussing the resolution. I'm interested in it.
We both have to run over there.
I know.
Shall we begin? Yes. Okay. So this presentation will be jointly facilitated by myself, Elaine Gisler, the Travel Council Director, and Caitlin Myers, our Community and Economic Development Specialist, who is playing an increasing role in code enforcement, as we no longer have a code enforcement officer that's solely dedicated to that. This presentation is the product of a previously scheduled workshop on online registration for short-term rentals being nixed in favor of just a kind of a staff huddle and then presentation of recommendations to the council, and so that's why we're here with you tonight, presenting this background and set of recommendations. So Elaine's office and my office really took the lead on this. We do have a community action team which comprises several other department heads and elected officials, but our offices took the lead on this, and we have run all of this material by that community action team, and so they did endorse it, and so it's not just the product of our offices as well. While we are going to talk extensively about short-term rentals, I think that many of the recommendations in this presentation are pertinent to code enforcement writ large, and so I want you to keep that in mind. I think everybody feels a sense of urgency and community pressure regarding short-term rentals, but we're trying to improve code enforcement across the board. So that is the focus that our office brought to the table, and of course Elaine's office is very focused on short-term rentals as well. So in your packet you've got background and considerations on improving code enforcement in Grand County. You've got recommendations from the Travel Council regarding the online registration of nightly rentals, and you've got an article from what they're doing in Alexandria, Virginia regarding the mandatory online registration for STRs. So I'm not going to go through the background of code enforcement in Grand County extensively, but suffice it to say that we've tried a few different iterations, none of which have worked all that well, I'm going to be honest. So we hope that this is a collaborative process. I will be frank, at times it has really felt like our office has been, trying to lead the charge and trying to drag, others along with us. And at other times we've felt, like there has been a very collaborative spirit, and so we're just trying to make sure that that collaborative phase remains the consistent, way of doing business here in Grand County for code enforcement. As you know, we did have a code enforcement officer. The council budgeted some money for that. In January, I released that code enforcement officer. It was not working out that well for a variety of reasons that I don't need to get into. And so as a result, our office is redistributing those job functions, and we're trying to establish a very streamlined approach that makes it less burdensome, not only on our office, but on the county at large. And so some findings that we'd like to go over with you from our analysis of what's happened and what is currently going on are here included in the packet. First, that successful code enforcement requires full buy-in from all county departments and elected officials. I don't know how else to say this, but we've all got to be on the same page, and we need institutional, support. And I'm not here to call out anybody individually. I'm just saying, it's really important for our community to see a unified vision for code enforcement and a unified approach to code enforcement, because one of our biggest challenges is just addressing the cultural history around code enforcement and the ongoing, culture around code enforcement. I think you all probably are aware of that. Code enforcement has primarily been and will continue to be a complaint-based system. That's just the reality with a resource-limited department, and I also think that works just fine for Grand County, at least in this initial phase. That said, I still think we can make significant improvements, even with limited resources being dedicated to code enforcement. And then I also want you all to be aware that this is going to be, a process to get us to the point where code enforcement is a solid, efficient, effective, part of Grand County business, because we didn't get to this point overnight. We have identified inefficiencies in the community action team review process when it comes to individual violations, and we've tried to speed up this process, but we need to speed it up even more, because there can't be such a long delay between the identification of a code violation and when we get that first letter out. We need it to be quick, and so in my opinion, it doesn't make sense for us to get a notice of a violation, whether it's a complaint or county staff recognizes it, and then have to go through the process of trying to call a community action team meeting, and then you're scheduling with 8 different department heads. It's unclear to us how the county will effectively issue citations. A year or so ago, the county actually authorized our office to write citations when we saw code violations, but as was pointed out to us by Dana Lee in the county attorney's office, there was a piece of legislation passed last year that effectively strips us of that right. The only people that can write citations are post-certified law enforcement officers. And so I don't have a good answer on that, quite frankly. That said, some of the recent and proposed changes to code definitions have been helpful. And then, as you know, at least 2 code violation categories require specific response systems, and that would be our private landfills that have accumulated over years in residential properties, and short-term rental violations, which really demand an immediate response and a forceful response, I think, given what's going on in our community. In your packet, there's a table of recommendations. Would you like to go through those? And if you have questions, we can address them. They're pretty straightforward. For lack of response, I'll just go into them.
I've lost it.
So,
we're here.
No, this is really exciting stuff.
Oh boy. We might.
I'm going to the city meeting right now.
Okay, so the first recommendation is that we have to ensure that all county departments commit to following the code enforcement procedure and strengthen the institutional commitment to code enforcement. So when there are properties or owners that are violating multiple codes, they go beyond the land use code, we need those departments to sign on to letters that are going out to the property owner. We need, again, that unified voice. In the past, we have tried to send out letters. We've got a block of signature lines with multiple departments that are part of this community action team, and sometimes, department heads don't sign on, even though there are violations pertinent to their office. While we can still send a violation notice with our department signature, it's just a stronger voice, and I think it's appropriate, quite frankly. So we need to continue reviewing the code enforcement procedure and update it as needed. We need to create a new code enforcement violation letter template. We have already done that, whereas the others are still in progress, the 2 that I mentioned before. Incorporating digital signatures into code violation letters so that we can have quicker review by all department heads, and then a quick signature so that we can get those out. Right now we don't have the capability. We are exploring various digital signature applications, and Matt Siniceros will continue to help us evaluate that. Our office is going to proceed sooner than later if we don't get a buy-in from other departments, because we've got a need for digital signatures for other reasons. We hope that other departments sign on, though. Adopting recommended changes to the land use code for code enforcement. You all approved that tonight, so we should be done with that. adopting a fee schedule for specific violation types. This is one of the recommendations from the county attorney's office. We talked about that earlier. I think we'll get that on the April agenda, 2nd April meeting. And this is, I think, I will let Elaine talk more about the online registration for STRs. This is one of the big blocks in your recommendation table. And while this is written specifically for short-term rentals, this is absolutely something that could apply to all code violations and really all applications to the county. Our office has got a goal of going completely digital by the end of this year. We're in 2018. We got to get there. It's just, we got to get there. We'll still, of course, accept hard copy applications, but we need to provide that option to applicants. Increases efficiencies across the board. So, Elaine, do you want to go through these?
I think the time that we're in with everything that we do so electronically, I mean, there's no reason why we have to keep shuffling paperwork back and forth and trying to get physical signatures. I mean, we're beyond that now. We should be able to encourage people to go online. In fact, we should start with our current county website so that we have something that's identifiable on there, that a person, if they're going to start a business, whether it's a restaurant, overnight rental, lodging, whatever it might be, that click on there and they have the immediate instructions and directions of what needs to be done, and they can follow through with that. And I think that, we currently, we're going, my department's going to be going electronically too. We're moving in that direction, less paper. But we currently work with STR Helper, who monitors, helps us to monitor, and Caitlin will go into that on some of the findings that she was able to uncover from STR. And Callie in my office, who was in the office, used to work on the TRT taxes that were collected, and then work with STR Helper, and then collaborate with Zachariah and Caitlin and the clerk's office and the assessor's office and everyone in order to help track down where these offenders are. Or not all of them offenders, but there could be a mistake, but at least sort it out so we make sure that everybody who's running a business is licensed. So we're hoping that if we're using STR Helper, which I know that the county has Cassell, but it would really behoove us to look at systems that could work together so that if people are going online and they start at the county and they're inputting their information and going through the entire process, that once that process is completed, that system talks to, say, the STR Helper system, so that all the licenses and everything is downloaded into that. So then we actually know, okay, well, this property, we know that these properties are already licensed. It just simplifies the whole process rather than, I don't know how many hours, I know Callie spent many hours trying to go through all of this. You might want to give them a snapshot of what you just found through STR Helper.
Yeah, I mean, I can...
Maybe, hold off on that for just a little bit.
Just to Elaine's point, if we were able to do it digitally, it would be able to send to all of our offices at once, which would just go back to the first point of better communication with all of the CAT team members, which is one of our bigger issues right now.
I think that it's time that we really move forward in that direction, we just have to. We're being left behind. And if you look at the information that the Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia did, I mean, they make it, you have to do it, but it's simple. You can sit in your home, fill out the information, upload all your documents. But if we can create this, an online portal on the grandcounty.com, it's just going to simplify our entire process of moving through and getting people licenses. At the end of the year, when the license expires at the end of December, and I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but there could be an email blast, a notification that goes out to that person in October that your license is due to expire in 60 days. So please renew your application and pay your license fee now, or so that people are aware of it and not forget that they have to renew their annual license. So I think that it has so many features and benefits if we move to this electronic process.
So, can I say something real quick, Manager?
Yeah.
So, I want you guys to feel like you've gotten to get in to explain all this, but I want to say I don't need to be sold on any of this. I've looked through this. I really appreciate the plan that you've put together. I've had an appetite for something like this for a while. This is an issue that is very high in the community, and I think the council's ready to act on anything within our means to enable staff to help mitigate this problem. And if there's anything outside of the purview of the council that's also an institutional hurdle, I think we should be made aware of that so that we can encourage compliance and collaboration moving forward. I really appreciate the time you've put into it. There's a few more items you guys are going to continue to explore, but all of this makes sense. We're adding more tools to the belt to address this issue, and I commend you, and I look forward to moving forward and putting these tools to work. I think most of us feel that way. I want you to be able to continue the presentation for whatever you feel is necessary, but we're ready to go.
Unless you have questions about anything that we
And I think the
submitted.
point you've made of everybody being on the same page is really important, and
We could move you all into the same office. That would help.
Oh, no thanks.
Attorney and everybody.
Oh, you mean
He's
that
got a
new?
good thing going over there.
You mean that new building you're building for us? Oh,
it's glorious.
So, does anybody else have any questions or thoughts, or?
Is there anything you guys need from us? Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that when the budget committee meets, they should, and I know Patrick is going to go work with Diana, but to see what in that Cassell program will enable us to possibly talk to the system that we're on, so that we have these two entities working together to sort of simplify this process.
Yeah, so what we might do, Elaine, is, if we get Cassell in here, I think that's the first step, and have the trainer in here, because they're going to be able to answer a lot of those questions. Whether this is open to integration or whether it's not, and what the costs are going to be. Because sometimes when you try to integrate with a system, I don't know how old Cassell is, sometimes it's cost prohibitive. So you may look at a bolt-on, for example, that can bolt on to Cassell, download the information, and then you can use that bolt-on application for both. Right. That's why I wanted to delay to Cassell, because I think we as a budget committee need to look at that, right, to make sure we're making the right decision.
Yeah.
We have to have the access, of course, right away.
And we had a conversation with STR Helper, and they said that they work with other counties throughout the country. They don't work with anyone that's on Cassell, but they have written programs where they can talk to each other and sort of,
Well, I found out
manage
the
it.
software vendors will offer you the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I guess that's, are you crazy? We've done this. We haven't done it with Cassell, but we've done it with everybody else, right? So we just have to be careful when we start to look at that.
Whether it's interoperability or not, the reality is that we need more streamlined information sharing across the departments. One of the most difficult elements of code enforcement for us is not having all of the information we need to check all of the boxes. Okay.
No, I agree with you guys 100% to get the electronic age.
And I mean, the clerk's office has been great working with our department and trying to give us whatever information they can in the assessor's office, but it's so labor intensive that if we had it electronically, it could solve a lot of our problems.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, approving litigation against opioid manufacturers and distribution and approving the contingency agreement with the law firm as counsel at 35% of recovery plus court costs, subject to final legal review. Your turn.
Hi.
Is this in budget?
Oh, that's
We're going to try to increase the budget. But, yeah, so everyone's probably familiar with the opioid crisis across the country, and that's in the media all the time, and certainly it's affected most of our families and friends in our community and throughout the country. And other people are probably aware that across the United States, persons and governments are moving forward with class action lawsuits to sue these pharmaceutical companies, their distributors, for the fraudulent information that they put out regarding their product that has had a huge impact on counties and governments and families and people. And all counties in Utah are currently joining in the class action lawsuits to try to recover what they've spent, governments have spent on rehab and medical, and certainly this council's aware of the amount of money spent on rehab and various things that we're required to do, and plenty of costs. And so what happens, I've been following threads for a while as other counties were joining in with various groups, and I hadn't been terribly interested in these class actions because a lot of times you join the class, the attorneys that are involved at the top make millions and millions and millions of dollars, and if you've ever participated in a class action, you might get 16 cents. So a check for 16 cents for your iTunes or whatever some issue was. And so I hadn't been terribly interested in it due to what would really come out of it. And the process is that a lot of these, they go off to federal court. All the class gets thrown into this box, and then at the high end, they negotiate the fees and what the class is going to get. And in the end, you don't have a whole lot of control over it and what you will get out of it. And so as this process has been moving forward and counties have been joining various firms for this class action, this particular firm, which is Durham, Jones & Pinniger, which is a local firm, they've teamed up with Phipps Anderson Deacon out of Texas, and they came and presented to us, was it last week? Something like that. And Councilperson Wells was able to get there and to sit in on that. We had about 7 or 8 attorneys in there.
Too many for that.
Yeah.
Sure, like a good lunch.
Yeah. They were all in suits too.
They were. So, and basically they were making their pitch for our county to retain them. And so their approach is to stay out of this big federal conglomerate that gets shoved into this federal court, and I think it was Ohio they were saying, and the deal's getting worked out there. And their approach is to keep it in state court and to file locally in our local courts these lawsuits, and to keep more control over it, and also attempt to get a better return.
What's it going to do for our courts in terms of more work, backlog?
Well, it's a major complex lawsuit, but they would file in, say, San Juan County and Grand County, and my understanding San Juan's going to join this law firm. But it keeps it local and actually gives us the potential to get a real return of damages that the county has suffered.
Pretty much going after the drug companies.
Yeah, and their distributors and those who put forward this information that opioids weren't addictive. So, which we know now is if you take them for around 7 days, you're highly likely going to be addicted. And they sold it for many, many years that they weren't addictive, and so they were handed out like candy at the candy store. And so if you read in the packet that we provided, it gives a lot of the detail about it. My understanding, San Juan is going to go with this group, and there's a whole lot of other counties and that are going to join up with this particular group. And I think that it won't cost the county anything. It's a contingency fee, which most injury cases are, which means they take 35% of whatever is recovered plus their court costs. And what they're doing is they're combining experts and their discovery and all of the complicated, complex, time-consuming legal processes with all the counties that are joining up and municipalities that are joining up, so that those costs are defrayed, and so each, like our expert witness they have listed in here would apply to everybody. And
So what do you think of 35%? Seems a tad high.
So 33% is the standard in Utah typically.
It is.
Yeah, 33%. So if you have in a car crash and you hire any attorney, it's going to be 33% plus court costs, and so 35 is completely reasonable.
I've got some really good experts involved. One guy's an MIT economist, and it's definitely a collective value.
Yeah, they bring a lot of
So
expertise.
I'm sorry, so it's like, you're saying, this is not gonna cost us any money?
No, anything that's recovered, they take their fee, their 35% plus their costs, court costs, and then, of course, the remainder comes to the county.
28 cents.
The 28 cents.
Money coming back that otherwise we wouldn't have
All
spent.
28 cents.
And what do we use that money for? I mean, is it going to be for courts and for help, or what's it?
So it'll likely, I mean, it'll probably come into the general fund, but it would probably want to earmark it for money we've been spending on, like Four Corners and all these things, and go back into treatment, drug court.
So what do you need from us? Just
So what I need from the council is that
a motion to
that you're
join?
approving that for the county to join in the litigation, and that the law firm of Durham Jones and Phipps Anderson will be our attorney.
So moved.
And
Second.
And to approve the fee agreement per our final review of it, make sure everything's accurate.
Yeah.
Just to
Okay,
move
so
forward.
Curtis made the motion that we enter into this agreement, and it was seconded by Patrick Trim. Any further discussion?
I think this is a no-brainer and a really, really good thing.
Okay,
Andrew,
all in, yes.
are you okay with me letting my trust have a look at this?
Yeah, sure.
Because they would ultimately, if we were in a litigation, they would be.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, good. All in favor?
Thank you.
Appointing a study committee of 3 council members for the purpose of having a committee rather than a chair alone complete the supervisor's performance standard evaluation form to evaluate the 2017-2018 performance of the council administrator. When I read the format and how we had to go about doing the evaluation, there was 2 ways to do it. One was for the county chair herself or himself to do the evaluation. The other was to have a committee of 3. I put out for if people had comments they wanted to make on the evaluation. I think I got an answer back from Evan. And then I put out, do we want to have a study committee? And I had 3 council members report back or email me back and say, yes, we want to have a study committee. So what I'm suggesting is that we have a study committee of 3 members. I'm thinking the chair needs to be on it, and perhaps the chair from the year before, and the vice chair, or if anybody else has any other ideas, I'm open to it. So we do need to get at least get 3 people assigned to the study committee for the evaluation.
I would move to appoint Madam Chair McGann, Councilmember Hawks, and myself to this study committee.
Is that a motion? Does anybody have a second? Any further discussion?
So, I'm sorry, did you say that you did send out an invitation to comment on the council? Because I just don't remember seeing that. I remember seeing a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, I did it, and I got a comment.
I responded to it, but.
No, you responded to wanting a committee, you didn't respond to the, asking for comment.
My only point of clarification is, I do think it's important that if other council members have input,
Oh, we need input from
that
other
it should flow through, and not this committee shouldn't control the
Because
process.
that was, because I sent out that email asking for input, and I sent out the email asking if we wanted to have a study committee. Like I said, Evan responded to the input. I didn't get anything from anybody else. So I will resend that email, and we will get our input, right?
Yeah, I think it would be good to solicit input from other
And then
council
we're
members.
doing,
And take that into our process and to factor that into the evaluation.
And that was part of the process, even if it had been done by the chair.
I did send you a response.
You did?
Yeah, but I was comfortable with the way it is now.
Yeah,
I saw that.
Okay, I forgot. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to have Mary McGann, Curtis Wells, and Jalen Hawks be the members on a study committee of the 3 council members for the purpose of having the committee rather than the chair alone. Any further discussion? We did get it.
So is it a study committee or an evaluation?
About a study committee to do the evaluation.
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
It's an evaluation.
And we've already implemented this year the circular
360.
The circular or the 360 where all department heads will be evaluating as well, which we didn't have, that I implemented this year that wasn't implemented in the years past. So we will be getting feedback from her people.
So the committee is going to submit their findings on this form. Is that what you're saying?
We do an evaluation form, but the committee will be filling it out
Right.
instead of just.
There's 2 forms. There's 2 forms.
So-
I've already sent my self-evaluation to the chair. What the committee will be doing will be filling out the supervisor section of that, and will be making their own ratings on each of the 12 categories.
Can we get a copy of that, please?
Oh, that would make it easier for you to submit.
Yeah, it was very open-ended.
Well, it's supposed to be open-ended if you follow the process, because what I want you all to know is the county council, you are my supervisor. All 7 of you will have the opportunity in a closed session also to hear everything that the study committee comes up with, whatever you want. You can amend it, you can do, you guys are the boss. So
you want to get, to email the form to all council people so that they can look at it, and then the 3 of us will set up the time we want to start working on it. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, all in favor of Hawks?
So I have a comment. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna vote.
So this is kind of a related question, but as you're evaluating department heads, one thing that really works well is you evaluate them on the budget, right? So that's one line item in terms of their meeting budget or not meeting budget.
Yeah, it's in there.
Is that in here?
It is.
Okay, great. I just want to check.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor? Passed unanimously.
May I just put out there that, just so you know, the process would be for the committee. Whoever wants to be that spokesperson needs to get to the council office coordinator. There's a process, and you've got 1 week to get the input back, the input over to the 360 form, the circular form, as you say, to the department heads and to the 2 office staff who report to me, those 15 people, and they have 1 week to respond. And then the committee has a week after that to pull it all together. So we're on a timeline because everything is based on my work anniversary. So, which is March 31st. We have 30 days after that. We can go a little late because we allowed it in the resolution, but it's important to stick to the timeline, and whatever you need, I recommend just corresponding with Bryony on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Bryony, I'll be corresponding with you.
Also, just if I may, my self-evaluation that you have, that's confidential information. So it needs to, obviously, if you're going to send it out by email, I mean, I just ask that, of course, you all treat it that way with confidence and confidentiality and sensitivity and all that. The other is, what did I want to say? The 360 form that the department heads will fill out is completely different. It's that one sheet that you all approved recently. And that they are to do it anonymously, mandatory, sealed, confidential, everything. So that's not to be done by email. Okay. But Bryony will manage that whole piece of it.
How could you be confidential in an email that day?
Right. Right.
So
You don't need to do it by email.
No. But having not gone through this process before, I just want to understand this. So the comments that are made will go to the 3 members, right? So, and then the 3 members will compile that data and put it in this form, right? And then that will be kept confidential as well.
And then we'll have a closed session.
And you have closed session, okay.
Yeah, and it'll be put into my self-evaluation, not a blank form.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it rides with yours.
It rides with mine, exactly. Yep. Yep.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
And it's all laid out in that resolution. It's in your packet.
Yeah. Consent agenda.
Yeah.
Consent agenda.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
I move to approve the consent agenda as written.
All in favor?
Wait,
all in second.
I'll second.
Motion by Evan Clapper, seconded by Patrick Tram. Any discussion, corrections, concerns?
I've got nothing this time.
Mouth to
All in
mouth.
favor?
Are you serious?
All in
Seriously
favor?
worried about that?
All in favor? Aye.
Spelling
Okay,
errors.
I thought there was a correction in here somewhere. That's spelling error.
This is my first opportunity behind the
My
wheel.
goodness.
Now that Mary's stepping out, I'm going to run the meeting as vice chair, Bryony. Would you please, well, we have no public hearings. Wait, I'm sorry, I'm skipping FF.
You're botching it.
I'm off to a rough start.
Wow.
Bryony, would
Calendar.
you please, calendar items?
You're one shot.
Rookie.
All right, for your March calendars. March 22nd at 10:30 is the CIB prioritization meeting. That's here in the chambers.
And that's just where you all are gonna, or if you all want to attend, but we've also let the department heads and elected officials, anybody that has a CIB project, they get to rank those. The question will be, we're going to have to get that ranking off to the ALG guy, Michael Bryant, but the question will be, I don't know what they'll do with it, if they're going to average it with what the council has already done with rankings. I don't know. Unless you all give a direction, that's what they'll do probably, is average it together with what the county council put together.
We should probably evaluate it first.
Okay.
March 29th is performance review committee meeting, and that's 1:30 here in the chambers. Evan, you are not able to attend that, is that correct?
So I didn't realize it was spring break. My volunteer.
So bring your kids. Bring your kids.
Volunteer for spring break. Makes no difference. I plan on being out of town. With my qualification.
What are your kids guys do? What's the date?
29th.
Take them to the performance thing. They'll enjoy that.
Friday?
Thursday,
What time?
1:30. Rory, you said you wanted?
Are you doing it?
I'll do it.
There you go.
Thanks, Curtis.
Chair,
Any corrections for March?
I'll be out of town from the 29th through the 1st.
April calendars. April 23rd, or the week of April 23rd, Grand County Audit, and that will be here in the chambers. And April 26th is Canyon Country Partnership, and that's in Price for April.
Excitement.
Employment opportunities, EMT Basic closes March 31st. Paramedic closes March 30th. Grand County Sheriff's Office Corrections Officer closes March 31st. Patrol Deputy closes March 31st. Communications Dispatch closes April 30th. Old Spanish Trail Arena Facilities Maintenance Technician closes March 23rd. And TRT Business Monitoring Specialist with the Travel Council closes March 23rd.
So Brian, I have a question. This is the first time, literally, since I've been on the council, that the assistant food service manager for the jail hasn't been on there. Did we fill it, or did we finally give up?
You know, it may have closed, and it may just not have been updated on the website. I don't know, but I can only assume that it's still open. I don't know. But don't take my word for it.
It's just hopeful.
Special events, March 24th, Behind the Rocks Ultra. April. These are only events that Grand County requires that you have to permit through Grand County. April 6th through the 8th, Spring Outer Bike. April 14th through the 16th, Trans Rockies. April 28th, Amasa Trail Run, and April 20th through the 21st, Fallen Peace Officer Trail Ride. And request for qualifications for on-call contract engineering services, and that closes March 30th. There is community development block grant second public hearing notice, and that is going to be April 17th. And we do have a request for proposals for a fireworks purveyor, and that closes April 10th. That's all I got.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, we've already done the next item. General counsel reports. I think I would entertain a motion to come out.
So moved.
Motion has been moved to dismiss or to table or postpone.
Postpone indefinitely. No, postpone until our next regular schedule. Where we postpone? Council reports. Okay. Just shake your head.
Because we have a closed session, so I think it's important to get to. Do we have any future considerations, though? We do. Yes. Well, I make a motion. Oh no, I can't. Who made the motion? Curtis made the motion, and it was seconded by Evan to postpone council reports till at a further time. All in favor? Okay. Move to, we need to have a motion to move into closed session. Okay.
I move we move into closed session.
I second.
For character,
Character.
professional competency.
The character.
Okay.
It's on you.
All in favor of going into closed session?
Who was the second?
I just.
Evan. Pat
So
seconded.
ma'am, we're
Evan.
going into closed session, so.
Evan motioned and Pat seconded that we go into closed section to discuss character. And competency.
And professional.
And professional and physical.
We know the intention.
No, I thought you picked one.
No.
No.
Have to read that.
Did you vote?
Yes. It passed unanimously to go into closed session to discuss.
Close the door.
Yeah, make sure the recording's on.
Mike's